Imagine waking up, your world turned upside down, literally. Your head is throbbing, your body aching, and you're hanging from a tree in a vacant lot. You're covered in bruises, and you can't remember how long you've been unconscious. He opens one eye, the memories flooding back. The ambush, the beating, the laughter of his attackers echoing in his ears. And there they are, his tormentors. One of them, a guy with slicked back pink hair, steps forward. You're unlucky to be a classmate of such trash at school. But you couldn't even imagine that it would happen again at university. The main character thought that they were not planning to let him down, throwing the blue notebook back. The pink-haired guy told Lindy that he was tough enough for an orphan. He said he was constantly beating him up at school. And he never died. Linghu thought about the fact that this guy's name was Hao, and he was a former classmate, or rather a bully. Hao, with a wicked grin, told him that he had seen his character in the game, and he looked cool. He guessed that Lingyi was so shabby in reality that he thought he would be a pretty boy in the game. At least Hao's eyes opened wide, and after saying that the mere sight of him annoyed him. When he saw him, he punched him in the chest. Link Qi coughed up blood and thought about how he had been clinging to it ever since he accidentally bumped into it at school, and it was useless to apologize. Hao chuckled viciously, frowning. The protagonist thought that there was no point in asking for mercy from people like him, he asked, who had allowed him to become an awakened one. The awakened one is a symbol of humanity's second evolution. Under the influence of the growing popularity of the game, Sky Valley players who reach the maximum level faster than others get the opportunity to game their profession. Thanks to this, their in-game skills are transferred to real life. This is the second evolution. The awakening, the younger and stronger the awakened, the more valuable they are to the state. With their superiority over ordinary people and their special privileges in everyday life and education, the awakened become the top of the elite. Hao mockingly shook his hand, and with the blood of trash, the two guys next to him looked at Lingyi in surprise, and one of them said that if he continued to beat him up, he might die. With a threatening expression, Hao turned to him and asked if he felt sorry for him. The guy said in a frightened voice that he was just afraid that if he really died, he might have problems. Hao asked if he thought that if such squalor died, it would somehow affect him. The elite Lin Si was hanging upside down in front of them, bleeding profusely. Another guy noticed the main character's gaze. Lin Si's eyes were calm. Hao was angry, the veins on his face bulging. He shouted that this was what he hated most about him. The Hao skill is a battle cry effect. The power of the battle cry hits the opponent's body and mind. The sound wave from Hao's head rocked the hanging Lin Si. He shouted at him to admit that he was trash, blaring furiously at. He asked why. He could see the steadfastness in his eyes. He shouted that he was an awakened one, and asked who he thought he was. Blood gushed out of Ling's mouth, and he thought that if he had the chance to become an awakened person, it would be different. One of the guys said it was getting late, and it was time to go. The sun began to set over the city, turning the buildings orange. Hao said it was boring, and he didn't even warm up. He added that he would hit him even harder next time. One of the guys started talking about what would happen if they didn't untie him. Hao shouted that he wasn't finished yet and threatened that if he interrupted him, he would hang him up as well. Ling Kuang's from the tree by his feet and thinks that if only he could start over, it would be great. He thought about how that wouldn't happen. Late evening, residential building. Lindsay gets out of the shower, wiping her head with a towel. His body is covered in bruises and abrasions. He looked at the helmet lying on the table with its wires and glowing screens after entering the game. Lindy, as his white-haired game character, shook his head and thought about how he wouldn't be ranked in the top 100 thieves. He walked forward, surrounded by trees, with his head down, and thought about the fact that the intimidating top of the battle power can also not be talked about. He thought that if he had another chance, perhaps he would also become an awakened one. A muscular guy in armor turned to the girl and said that for such quests you don't need to ask for help from outsiders, and they can call their clan for help. A girl with light pink hair, wearing a dark blue robe, was standing with a purple book hovering over her hand. She retorted with a worried face and said that if she hadn't met him, she would have already joined the other players' group. She said that she didn't want to use the clan's help, and decides she had already taken advantage of his offer and hired other players. The armored man smiled awkwardly, scratched his head, and told the girl that as a bodyguard he was responsible for her safety, and there were a lot of crooks and people with bad intentions in Paradise Valley. Opening one eye slightly, the girl replied that she was not a child and could recognize such things. He asked if he had spent a lot to hire the three behind them. The man replied that it was, and said that there was one thief, and most likely this one is the one who is standing near the teleport. Lindy turned to them and introduced himself with his hand on his chest. He said he was a level 120 ghost thief, and they hired him. The grim-faced man said he didn't have to introduce himself because they'd seen his message. He told him that he was only here to fill out the group, and his job was just not to slow them down. Link glared at him gloomily and thought about how he didn't really like to talk. In reality, he wondered why some people didn't know how to watch their tongues. The man was frowning at him. A hooded girl with animal ears and a face wrapped in bandages told Lindy that she had heard that he wasn't a member of any class, not even the Union of All Clans. The main character replied that he was a solo player. The Union of All Classes is a gathering place for the best players, an organization that passes any quest and fulfills all possible requirements. For money, Lang's skills have long been sufficient to join the Union. but he can't afford the entry fee, and he needs to withdraw money from the game to make a living. A woman with a bow dressed in armor and a green hooded cloak said it was loners like him who scared her the most. They explained that he has no qualifications and no guarantees, and it is possible that he is here by accident. Ling Qi replied indifferently. The archer gritted her teeth in exasperation and asked who he thought he was. The blonde-haired girl asked them to calm down and not fight, and said that since they were all there, they should start the quest. She thought about how things had gone wrong before the quest even started and wondered if everything was going to be okay. The man jerked his thumb at himself and grinned, saying that she had no reason to worry because he was here. They announced that the group was assembled and it was time for them to teleport. They told Len Si that he would go first. Frowning, he entered the portal. The tower of levitating rectangular figures glowed with a bright blue light. Bolts of blue energy enveloped everything. The surprised group asks what's going on and why the teleport field is so strange. They ask what's the matter, looking at the brightly glowing teleport. The girl with a worried face said that this had never happened before. She assumed that it was a system error and said that Lindy had already logged in. Lindy stands surrounded by a bright blue energy. He asked where he was and said that he was supposed to teleport to the quest location. He assumed it was some kind of mistake. Looking around in surprise, he noticed that the teleport's energy was very chaotic. He noticed that his body was wrapped in blue rectangles. He was surprised to find that his body was disintegrating. Lindy presses the exit button unsuccessfully and assumes that the game is broken. Blue rectangles wrapped around his arm, and he realized that his body was disappearing. Chuckling bitterly, he thought about how lucky he was to encounter such a bug. He asked if there was anything in his life that should be expected at all. Narrowing his eyes, he asked me to quickly erase it. As he half disappeared, he noticed that despite everything, it was getting very quiet inside. He asked why. The main character thought that he was feeling calm. Chuckling, he said it didn't matter. He said he was tired and wanted to be erased in reality as well. He thought that in any case he didn't have anything to live for, and he had too many regrets. Looking at the teleport, the man noticed that Lin Si still hadn't come out. He frowned thoughtfully. The man looked at the dialogue box in surprise. He noticed that Len's account was also missing. Opening his eyes, the protagonist saw a yellow lamp in front of him and wondered if he had returned. Stretching his arm out in front of him, he thought about why his arm was so long. He assumed they were hallucinations. Sitting up, he said that something was wrong and thought that his body was very strange. He noticed a mirror nearby. Looking at it, he saw the face of his game character. He asked in surprise if he was in the game. The white-haired man with a receding hairline noticed that Linde was awake. Linde asked who he was in a frightened voice. He realized that this was real. The man asked if it had scared him. He noted that he didn't seem to remember anything. He said he found it in an alley when he was picking up meat. He immediately corrected himself and said that he found it while throwing out the trash. Elsie asked worriedly where they were now, pouring something into a bowl with a ladle. The man replied that they were in his home. He said that Ling Kuo had been unconscious for a day and should be hungry. He told him to get some food. The main character asked what had happened. A TV with a non-working image said that Sky Valley, a new game launched in several countries, was released 3 months ago. Lindy frowned and glanced at the TV. The voice on the TV said that since the very beginning of its launch, this game has attracted a myriad of players and their number is breaking all historical records. The main character drew attention to the fact that the Sky Valley was launched 3 months ago. The voice on TV announced that this will be the biggest event of 2060 and encourage people to connect to the Paradise Valley and make their dreams come true. LQ was surprised to think that the year 2060 was 3 years ago. He turned to her and asked her what year it was. He replied that, as they said on TV, it is now 2060. He asked if he was mad from hunger. LQ was shocked to think that he had returned to 3 years ago, and whether the sky had heard his pleas. He realized that he really got a chance to start over. The man asked if he was okay. Ling Kuo was sitting with his back to him, shaking and laughing, grinning. He replied that he felt better than fine. He thought that this time he had goals to get into the top 100 and become godlike like those players, become the strongest awakened, create your own guilt. Frowning, he looked resolutely ahead. Lindy is sitting at the table eating the contents of a bowl. The man shouted at him to eat slowly. Chuckling, he told him not to rush because there was more in the pot. The main character, with meat in his mouth and a bowl in his hand, reached for the bread and said that when he woke up he realized that he was very hungry. Turning away, the man said that he would give him supplements now. As he helped himself to a plate, he asked if he was all alone. Lindy lowered his eyes. Sadly, his hand stopped moving, and he thought that when he went back in time he realized that he was always alone. He thought that he didn't know where his parents were and that they might have been dead for a long time. He remembered walking through a snowy alley surrounded by couples and families. He thought that he didn't really care about them, though. He replied with a grim look that he was alone. The man paused for a moment and told him to come here from time to time, even though he didn't understand what this place was yet. Looking back at the black bags in the corner of the room, Lindy noted the local surroundings. He assumed it was a slum not far from the city's skyscrapers are battered buildings covered with cracks. A man with a sad face added that it is also a shelter for people who cannot survive in a neighboring city. He said it was a place where the poor gathered. Link remembered that in his previous life He could rely on a scholarship and savings from part-time work, so he rented a room in a cheap dorm nearby. The man reminded me of a game that had just been advertised on TV. He said that someone spent all their savings a while ago to get a gaming helmet and couldn't calm down because they wanted to buy it. The man looked up and said that it was his son who had passed away not long ago. He said that his son had told him that there was a new game called Sky Valley, and if he became an awakened one, he could make them happy, and said that he was sure that he would make a name for himself in this game. The man said that he really wanted to help get out of here. He asked how it was possible to change reality so easily thanks to the game. He added that he was naive. Linde said that it was indeed possible. Hearing his words, the man glanced at him. LQ rested his hand on the back of the chair and said that becoming an awakened person could change your life dramatically. He said it wasn't a normal game. Frowning, the protagonist said that his son wasn't lying and that it wasn't an exaggeration to say that the Sky Valley was their second world in the future. Tears welled up in the man's eyes, and he remembered his son's words that he would definitely make him happy. He said that the way he talks to him about the seriousness of the game reminds him of his son. Chuckling, he thanked him. He smilingly told Lindy that he seemed to still be studying. He offered to let him live here if he had nowhere else to go. The main character opened his mouth and said surprise and thanked him. The man said that he had something for him, and it was useless to keep it because his son was no longer there. The main character was clearing the plates from the table. The man handed him a gaming helmet. Lin see his eyes rolled, and he realized that it was a first-generation helmet. The man said that his son no longer needs this thing that would make his dreams come true, and it will finally stop collecting dust. He asked the main character if he would let his son's dream live. Lindsay seriously told him not to worry. Frowning, he said that not only would he continue his son's dream, but he would also surpass it. He took the helmet out of his hands. He decided to start now and put the helmet on his head. The dialogue boxes say, create a character. You have chosen a name. Lindy, choose your race and class. Human. Lindy thought that playing as a human was more comfortable. The dialogue box describes the people as indigenous people of the valley. They have balanced physical qualities and amazing wisdom, a weapon that people can be proud of. Humans additionally have 3 wisdom points and 3 perception points. Each level up increases wisdom them and perception by 1 extra point. LQ, looking at the elves' images, thought that he had never really liked elven ears. The dialogue box described the elves translated as the noblest race. They have an elegant and refined appearance, a flexible body, possess ranged and melee weapons, as well as an additional 3 points of dexterity and 3 points of charm. Each level up increases agility and charm by 1 extra point. The dialogue box describes orcs, a warrior race known for its strength. They have explosive power and a strong body. They can withstand a large number of attacks. They have an additional 3 points of strength and 3 points of defense, and each level up adds an additional 1 point of strength and defense. Link Q thought about who he should choose. The advantages of different races can have a certain impact on the choice of occupation. There are 5 main classes: warrior, mage, archer, thief, and priest. Thieves has 3 branches of improvements: a shadow thief that is human and capable of covertly killing. A thief who is an LP is good at speed and agility. If you choose an orc, then such a thief will be good in attacks and confrontations. Linked Key had decided to choose a person because he had played as a shadow thief in the past, and one shouldn't waste the past life's experience. The dialogue box says you have chosen a male person class. Thief, you have acquired basic active skills. Backstabbing, you have 12 extra points, and you want to allocate them to your stats. LQ thought about the fact that the first level gave 12 extra points, but in his previous life he had entered into cooperation with recommendations. In front of him was a dialogue box with stats: strength, perception, def, defense, agility, wisdom, charm. The main character clicked on the confirmation button. He decided that he wanted to be agile in this life so that he could level up faster. The dialogue box announced that the distribution of skills was complete, and he was given clothes for human race. Thieves, Linku was wearing black clothes, was shrouded in light and blue rectangles. The dialogue boxes started counting down from 5 to 1. A white city with large blue crystals and a castle. The main city of people is Casa. The dialogue box says, welcome to the Heavenly Valley. When and see shrouded in the blue light, the protagonist thought that he was here again. He thought about how in his previous life he started playing a year after the game was released, and this time he would take advantage of this opportunity. Lindy found himself in a crowd of people. He looked around. People kept coming out of the teleport, and the crowd in front of it was noisy. Lindy thought about how it had only been 3 months since the server was opened, and there were already so many people here. Opening the dialogue boxes, he decided that he needed to hurry up and make a plan. He decided to see who had the highest level right now. He opened his eyes in surprise. In the first place was Dark Scar, level 12 warrior. Dark Scar is a player who hides his personal information. No one knows the details of his identity. He does not join any guild at the same time. He is a person who was invited by all the guilds and is revered as the emperor of the people and the strongest player in the Heavenly Valley. Link folded his arms and said that the Dark Scar in his previous life was always at the top of the list. He added that a professional is always a professional. With a frown, the main character said that almost all the players from The past life's top are in the current top, and some legendary guilds from the past have only recently appeared. He decided that he needed to hurry. Link waved his cloak and thought that in this lifetime he would use experience and become an invincible player that no one could match. As he approached the teleport, he thought that he would become the strongest thief with peerless speed, and he would be like a god in the flesh. Frowning, he thought that he would be the first awakened one. As he entered the light of the portal, he decided to begin his ascent. Monsters fly over the village. Ling Qi walked into the village from the portal and thought that although he had visited this village many times in his past life, every time he was here, he was surprised by the popularity of this place. Novice village in the main town of Casa. The main character is standing on a busy street. One person is shouting about selling equipment for beginners. The second one asks if there is an automatic navigation for missions. Another says that they are teaming up to clean up monsters and asks those interested to respond. Another person asks if there is a kind-hearted person which will show you the way. A muscular man above whom the fourth level is visible surrounded by people tells the first level beginners that they all have one starting silver coin, and he has weapons and equipment for the first level. He announced with a smile that these items were much better than the standard ones, and they would level up much faster. He told them to hurry, because they wouldn't be available again. Above his palm was a yellow dialogue box with a payment confirmation button. He glanced at the crowd. One person asks if the vendor has armor for the warrior, and says it would be nice to have some more protection. Another person asks if there is a staff for the magician. Another asks if he has a priest's robe to increase his wisdom and mana. The salesman replied that he had everything and told them to go through one at a time. Link, he thought about how in his previous life he had also spent dozens of copper coins to buy level 1 thieves' daggers, which had 2 more attacks than a beginner's dagger. The main character recalled how he looked at the newly acquired dagger with a glint in his eyes, touching his forehead with 2 fingers. He thought that now that he thought about it, he realized how stupid he was. The seller happily announced the sale. Link, he closed his eyes and thought that this equipment can be obtained on the 3rd level map, and such businessmen mostly deal only with beginners whose upgrade they don't care much about, and after the 3rd level they disappear. The main character continues to walk down the street, thinking that an early upgrade is not difficult. Village after a player's level exceeds the 5th, they will no longer be able to enter here unless there is a special mission. Lingy thought that it was better to hurry up and level up. He opened his eyes and saw a level 1 elf with pink hair asking someone to bring her along. She said she would be obedient. The guy laughed in response, saying that he would definitely take such a cute elf with him. Another level 1 guy from the crowd shouted if they could add him as well, adding that he would also be an obedient fighter. The elf asked them to add it if they had room and thanked them with a smile. El Ku crossed his arms and thought that the 3rd and 4th level players were especially popular here, and the top level, the 5th level of the novice village, was even more like a boss. A level 5 guy wearing a wizard's hat looked menacingly at the person in front of him and said that he would transfer them to the 3rd level for at least 3 coins. In the valley, players can form a group at the 1st level if the difference in levels within the team does not exceed the 2nd level. So advanced players for cleaning monsters in a novice group are common. In the dialogue box of the team management panel, it says the limit of the current team captain is 3 people. Players of the 1st level can form teams with players up to the 3rd level, and the maximum number of players depends on the level of the captain. Frowning, the main character thought that the main reason advanced players showed up in newbie monster cleaning group was because there were too many missions for newbies. The monster is lying on the ground dead. Above his head is written update. Lingkuo thought of the 1st level crowd queuing up to kill mobs. One person in the queue says that the update time is too long. Another says that his task is simply to kill this monster and asks him to let go. Another one says that this monster is about to upgrade. People behind us are arguing for a place in the queue. There is no fixed storyline in the valley, and countless quests are decided by your own choice. What is most important for the player is to explore the world and develop the character. Leveling up at an early stage is not difficult. The only difficulty is killing monsters, so leveling up is slow. Lindy is standing next to a road sign grinning. He thought that he had a way to quickly reach the 5th level shopping street. Lindy said that there was a rookie shop here. 4 people are standing in front of a shop counter discussing a cute NPC girl. Lindy came over and asked to be allowed to pass. The purple-haired guy walked away and asked what level 1 players were doing here. A merchant with dark skin, purple hair, blue eyes, and a tattoo with a bag of money on her arm asked the main character what he needed. Lindy said hello and asked for a scroll of initial acceleration and a one-time hook claw. The dark-haired guy laughed and said another stupid newbie. The purple-haired guy mockingly asked if he could level up easily by playing as a thief and buying an acceleration scroll. Laughing, he said that he thought he was playing at level 999. With only 1 dagger, he added that these 2 things appear to have exhausted his initial funds. The guy reached out with a sneer and said it's better to give them to him and he will take him to the next level. The merchant handed him a scroll of initial acceleration and a one-time claw hook. Though the merchant clapped her hands with a smile and announced that it was worth 90 copper coins. She waved after the main character, wishing him well. Lin C raised his hand without turning around, and thanked him. The purple-haired guy pointed an irritated finger at him, saying that he was a fool, and didn't even listen to them. The dark-haired guy mockingly told the protagonist to hurry up, calling him a level 1 fool. Link asked them how long it had taken them to reach their current level. The purple-haired guy replied irritably that he had spent 15 days to get the 3rd level. He asked if he thought it was so easy for a newbie to kill monsters. The guy in the helmet replied that he had reached the 3rd level in 13 days, 4 days per level. He said that his speed was not bad because many people stay at the 1st level, even for 10 days. Turning around, Link calmly said that he understood everything and they would still be in the novice village in the next day or two. They looked at him in disbelief, and the purple-haired guy asked irritably what he meant. The main character waved his hand and said that they would see each other in a day. The sun is setting on the village. He thought that they would soon understand. Lindy goes to the rock and says that he remembers that it is here sunset over the mountains of the main city of Casa. Sunset Peak, located in the northeast of the main city of Casa, is magnificent and continuous. It's called Sunset Peak because the peak rushes straight up into the sky and seems to connect with the sky and Earth, so that even the sun doesn't touch the edge. The main character looks up, shielding his eyes from the light with his hand. Looking around, he thought that there would be fewer people here because there were fewer missions in the initial stages. Ling Qiu grinned and thought that there were fewer people, so there was no chatter and he could level up comfortably. He noticed a group of people at the side. The guy with the short brown hair says he's accepted the mission too, and it seems the conversation automatically starts the quest. The guy with the elf ears replied that he had talked to an NPC named Old Man at Sunset. The short-haired guy replied that it was unknown what this NPC wanted. He said the conversation triggers a 10-minute time-limited task. He wondered how they could reach the top of the peak in 10 minutes. The hooded guy with animal ears said that it couldn't be done in 20 minutes, let alone 10 minutes. He added that everyone's level is low right now, and the speed bonus is too low. He said that the first half of the mountain is fine, and there is a road there, and there is a rift halfway up, so they need to go around the other side to continue climbing. He said that the passage will take at least 6 minutes, and if there is no road it will be even more difficult to climb. The pink-hair elf agreed with tears in her eyes that if you didn't get around it you would become a puddle. Waving her arms, she said that she also jumped once, thinking that there would be some hidden platform, but just fell to her death. The guys furiously shouted that this mission was disgusting, asking who allowed this beautiful girl to cry. She told them that their entire team had done this task but failed and broke up. They told her not to worry and that they would take her to another place to level up. She agreed. Ling Kuei grinned as he closed his eyes. It stands in front of the peak with a dialogue box in front of it. He said that the access point to the mission should be here somewhere. Lindy heard a footstep and turned around. A man in a white hoodie was asking if anyone wanted to see the view from the top of the mountain. A guy with gray hair walked past, saying it was a waste of time. He saw that the elderly man with a white beard and a white robe was the Old Man at Sunset. The Old Man at Sunset. The old man asked again if anyone wanted to see the view from the top of the mountain. Lindy greeted him politely. The old man asked if he wanted to see the scenery. The main character agreed with a smile and said just came to admire the scenery at the top of the mountain. The group of people noticed that Lindy was talking to the old man. The elf-eyed guy asked if this was the level 1 thief that just passed through. The short-haired guy asked why a level 1 thief also took on this task, and if he was stupid. He said with a smirk that it was because he had heard others say that there was a special task here, so he came to take it on. He added that there is nothing to say about his level and strength, and said that there really are brainless players everywhere. The elf exclaimed in displeasure that this kind of task can only be completed at a high level, and instead of wasting time it's better to fight monsters fairly and improve. She said she was sorry for her death and the time she had wasted. The elf-eyed guy with a smirk suggested waiting until he looked like a fool after failing the mission. Lindy stands with one hand on the ground, shrouded in purple light. The system notification says request from the Old Man at Sunset. Do you accept the mission of climbing to the top? The time limit is 10 minutes and the countdown starts after the request is accepted. The main character thought that he had all 12 points in the skill of dexterity. Just for this task, he decided to try to maximize his physical agility and speed bonus this time. Frowning, he thought that this was a special mission, and in his previous life he had tried to complete it countless times. But in the end he gave up. He thought that if he succeeded he would get special equipment. He slapped his hand on the dialogue box and decided that this would be his first step to success. He accepted the task. The dialogue box reported that it accepted the request. Frowning, he told the old man to wait for them to see each other at the top. The old man looked on calmly. The dial box indicates that the countdown has started. Lindy rushed forward. He thought about how he was here to win. A frog-like monster is drinking water from the lake. Noticing the disturbance in the water, he glanced up and saw Linny moving in quick leaps. The dialogue box says that there are 9 minutes and 58 seconds left. The main character quickly climbed the rocks with jumps. The elf exclaimed that he had taken up the task. The short-haired guy chuckled. The elf-eyed guy laughed and said that he was looking forward to seeing him fail the mission. The guy with the short hair said that they would soon see him fail. When he heard the exclamation, he asked what was the matter, pointing his finger at the serpentine. The guy said that he did not run along the serpentine, but went into the forest thicket. He quickly runs into the forest thicket. He thought that the serpentine was safe and convenient, but it was also winding and difficult to pass. He reasoned that a straight path between 2 points is the shortest, and a path along a serpentine will be several times the distance between 2 points. Frowning, he thought that the reason why no one walks in the undeveloped forests is because the system randomly creates monsters in the dense forest. A big mouthgrass monster. Link Q thought about how in his previous life he had learned the fastest way to the top for a thief and had run this road countless times, and these big mouthgrass monsters are the secret solution to quickly reach the top. Several large mouthgrass monsters leaped out of the bushes. One of them lunged at the main character, opening its mouth wide. The dialogue box described big mouthgrass monsters, the most common annoying little monsters in the mountain thicket. Although they don't pose much of a threat to passersby, if there are a lot of them, they will become a headache. The outline of a dagger appeared in Lin Si's hand. He ran towards the monster, activating the backstab skill. Like was enveloped in yellow lightning. The dialogue box described the skill. One of the main skills of a thief instantly appear on the enemy's back and defeat their weak spot. Damage deals power damage plus weapon damage when the skill is completed. Consumption 30 mana. Range of action 1m. Cooldown time 20 seconds. Lindy stabbed the dagger behind the monster's back, and an inscription appeared above the monster's head stating that it had taken 13 points of damage. The dialogue box reported that the backstab was 80% complete. The main character, grinning, thought that this was the main point of his ascent. The dialogue box says that there are 9 minutes and 40 seconds left. Linku decided to cut down on the passing time by throwing backstabs. He was running towards the monsters coming out of the bushes. The dialogue box says that there are 9 minutes and 30 seconds left. The dialogue box says you have caused a lot of hatred among the big mouthgrass monsters. Many monsters behind the main character rushed at him in an attack. The dialogue box says that there are 9 minutes and 20 seconds left. Lindy noticed with a smile that the backstab was ready to be used again. He stabbed the monster in the back with his dagger, shouting for the others to come out to him. Lindy continues to stab you in the back every 20 seconds. The guy asked his group how long Lindy could last. He said that he chose the forest thicket and so would definitely encounter many monsters along the way. The elf raised her index finger and said with a smile that she didn't think it would last a minute. The boys looked at her fascinated. The guy in the green hood said she was very smart. Another guy said that he thought that surrounded by grass monsters, Lindy would die in just 3 seconds. They laughed, calling him stupid. The dialogue box says that there are 6 minutes and 30 seconds left. LQ grabbed a tree branch with his hand, jumping on them. He thought that it attracted a lot of grass monsters. There were a huge number of monsters below. Frowning, the protagonist thought that the next location was the Sunset Peak Rift. While jumping in the air, he thought that he must be on the other side. In front of him was a huge rift in the rock. Link Quell landed on a cliff and thought that it would take at least 10 minutes to reach the other side of the mountain. He stands on the edge of a cliff and thinks that if he crosses the rift, the top of the mountain will be right in front of him. The dialogue box says that there are 6 minutes and 10 seconds left. Looking around, he thought that there must be a nest of grass monsters near the rift. He looked straight ahead. In front of the main character was a primitive wooden structure under which there were many grass monsters. After discovering a nest of grass monsters' ears, he said that it was time for the claw hooks and acceleration scroll. The dialogue box says you have activated the initial acceleration scroll, duration 9 seconds. Frowning, Lind, he shouted. Backstab. The grass monster opened its eyes in surprise. Behind the monster, who was looking at him in disbelief, was the main character with a hook and dagger in his hands. He shouted to them to take him to the top. He stabbed the monster with his dagger. Stepping on the monster, the main character jumped up from it, stretching his hand forward. Monsters leaped up trying to reach him. Lingquil thought that his speed was fast enough and he would definitely be able to cross the fog. He jumps through the fog, reaching out his hand, and thinks that this stump of rock solves everything. He threw the hook forward and shouted that this distance would allow him to take off. He gritted his teeth, and the hook caught on a log sticking out of the rock and sent him flying up. As he neared the edge of the cliff, he thought it was the last step left. A grass monster was standing at the edge of the cliff. When Lingqua saw him, he grinned, wrapped in yellow energy, and held out his dagger. The dialogue box says that there are 5 minutes and 30 seconds left. The sun sets over the sea. The dialogue box says that there are 5 minutes and 20 seconds left. The main character flew up over the rock. He looked ahead. The dialogue box says that there are 5 minutes and 17 seconds left. Lindsay landed on a rock. The dialogue box congratulated him. The dialogue box says that the mountain climbing task was completed in 4 minutes and 43 seconds. The old man said that it was unexpected that he reached the top of the mountain in less than half the time. He smiled and told him that he had dashed through the fog and reached the top, and there was a lot of courage and determination in him. Lindy smiled and asked how he would have been able to reach the top of the mountain if he didn't have the determination to go there in this lifetime. They stand on the top of a mountain. The old man said he was an interesting young man. A gust of wind lifted the hood from his head. The main character looked at him in surprise. The old man crossed his muscular arms over his chest and said that he was able to master the power of a brilliant skill. The dialogue box says, since it took you less than 5 minutes to complete the quest, you have opened the secret mission of the Elder of the Mountain, a certificate of mastery. Lind was surprised, glancing at the old man who was walking towards him. He thought that he didn't even think that he would be given a secret quest. The old man put his hand on his chest and said with a smile that his determination reminded him of how he was in the past. He handed him the item in his hand and told him that he was confident to the point of insanity and thought he was going to be King Lingquo. Took the item from his hand and looked at it in surprise. The dialogue box described a certificate of mastery covered in dust. The certificate conceals mysterious stories and journeys. Great people have polished it with their experience, and it will finally regain its former glory. In his hand was a small metal object with folded golden wings. Link Kie was looking down, shrouded in yellow light. From below, the dialogue box says, "Congratulations on opening the Master's Path. Secret mission, find hints to explore the secrets behind the icon. Task progress 0%. Frowning, he noticed that there were no specific instructions and assumed that this was a research mission. He thought that he hadn't heard of this quest in the past, so he had no idea what it was. The old man said that it was a reward only available at the peak of your career, and that he was pleased with his determination. A large purple dialogue box with images of items appeared in front of the main character. The dialogue box says, "Master's Suit, special equipment for the mission of climbing to the top. Basic attributes of the costume: Master's Power deals 1,000% damage to all monsters of the 5th level and below. Master's Body, wild monsters of the 5th level and below can only deal you 1 point of damage per attack. The name of the costume automatically disappears on the 5th level, along with the attached attributes, and cannot be worn together with other equipment." Lindsay was delighted. The dialogue box asked if he wanted to equip the suit. The main character confirmed after passing through the purple rectangle. Lindy was wearing a white light armor. He grinned. The old man, with the hood removed from his head, said that his mission here was accomplished. Lindy asked him who he was. He thought that he was obviously not simple. The old man looked at him and said that they would meet again if his resolve didn't leave him at the top. LQ was surprised to hear his words. Putting his hand on his shoulder, the old man said that he would take him to the people who were standing at the foot of the mountain, and they would witness his return from the top. With a single bound, they headed from the top of the mountain to the bottom of it. The elf put her hands on her waist and said with displeasure that it had been a long time, and he still hadn't come down. The guy with the short hair laughed and assumed that he had already failed the task and ran around afraid of the shame. The guy with the elf ears agreed and offered to take her to a good place to level up. The guy in the green hood noticed something and asked what it was. Something glittered in the sky. It landed in front of them, hitting the ground hard, and they asked what was going on. A guy with short hair asked if it was a monster. While looking into a cloud of dust, the elf girl snuggled up to one of the guys and assumed it was a game bug. She opened her eyes in surprise, and the old man and Lindsay were standing in front of them. The main character was leaning on his hand on the ground, and the old man was standing straight with his arms crossed over his chest. They recognized him as a level 1 thief. When he looked at them with a serious face, a crowd of people looks at the scattering cloud of dust. A man in the crowd asks if these two are NPCs. Another asked if he had completed the mission of climbing to the top. The elf said with displeasure that it was the same noob thief. A voice in the crowd asked how this was possible and how he did it. The elf's eyes glittered, and he corrected himself, calling him little brother. Another voice in the crowd asked where he got the equipment. Lingquo, clad in white armor, walks forward amidst a scattering cloud of dust. Someone in the crowd suggested that it was a reward for completing a mission. Another person was surprised that he received such equipment at the first level. Another person in the crowd said that he didn't expect this mission to have such equipment. Another person said that he also wants to do this. An old man and the main character stands surrounded by a crowd. Lingquo thought that this caused a commotion. They were standing in the crater left by their landing, and he wondered how such a return could not attract attention. He scratched his head, puzzled. The old man said he would keep it now. Lingquo thought about how he would have to deal with these people on his own and politely thanked the old man. He thought about how he could only answer as the system suggested. The old man smiled and held out a hand that was shrouded in yellow energy. Lindy looked at him in surprise. A guy with short hair exclaimed that it was a special portal. He frowned and asked what kind of NPC this was. After all, he thought this old man was an ordinary NPC. The guy opened his eyes wide and asked if the main character was wearing any equipment from the unique quest. The elf frowned and asked what the unique quest was. The guy replied that there were 3 types of quests in the Sky Valley. The first one is a reward quest, dungeons or quests that players often receive. Rewards usually include experience, currency, item, skills, or equipment. The second is an adventure quest. Players encounter unusual NPCs or special information, as well as travel to special locations. The player is rewarded with additional skills or special equipment. The third is a unique quest. When someone completes such a quest, it will disappear forever, and other players will not be able to complete it. Each mode also has 2 forms of passing: a single quest and a team quest, in addition to the individual quest, the difficulty of which is fixed. The other 2 types of missions have 5 difficulty options: low level, medium level, high level, special level, crazy level. The bright-eyed elf said that it was no wonder the equipment on him looked really nice. Turning around, the old man told the protagonist that He hoped that they could meet again in the future if the protagonist still went on a glorious journey. Holding out his hand, Link wanted to ask about the mission of the Proof of Mastery. The old man said goodbye with a smile and entered the yellow portal. The dialogue box notifies you of the quest. Update: the portal closed in front of Lycée, and he thought that the old man had called him a great candidate. A level, closing his eyes and frowning, the protagonist decided that it was more important for him to raise his level. Now the elf crept up behind him quietly. She called out to him, and Linde opened his eyes. He found a female elf standing right in front of him, telling him how cool he was. He asked in surprise if something had happened. She asked what kind of equipment it was and said it seemed powerful. She gave him a pleading look and asked if he could level her up. She added that he looks like a master. Len Qua blushed, thinking that she had scared him, and noted that she was cute. The guy stomped his foot furiously, asking if she hadn't just asked them to level her up. He furiously asked if Lin Seal just completed a unique quest. The other guy cursed, pointing a finger at him furiously. The short-haired guy gritted his teeth and threatened to kill him at any moment. The elf woman shouted angrily at him, asking why he didn't complete the task himself if he had the chance. He furiously asked her why she was running from one person to another asking for a level up. Opening the interface, Lindy said that it looked like he needed to hide his equipment and personal information so that it wouldn't cause trouble. And he said with a smile that it would be better this way. Noticing that he was leaving, the elf asked why he left without even paying attention to her. Raising his hand, Linku said that let alone her, even these guys wouldn't be able to handle the location he was going to. She asked why. The short-haired guy angrily retorted that he was a level 1 rookie with rare equipment. He offered him a one-on-one fight and threatened to beat him up so badly that his own mother wouldn't recognize him. The main character slowly turned around, glancing at it. He asked if he really wanted to try it. The boys were stunned. The guy with the elf ears said that he was very arrogant. As LQ left, he whispered that these bums and this girl were the perfect match. An enraged guy with short hair demanded that he repeat his words louder. The main character replied that he had no time to play with them. The elf thought irritably about how shameless he was, and now all she could do was walk around with these fools. She ran up to them, grinning awkwardly, and asked them to help her level up. The boy with the elf ears asked irritably if she wanted to go with him. The guy with the green hood thought that the main character is cool. The elf said that she would show them an interesting outfit, and they replied that they were not evil people and she could rely on map of the 5th level of the Ant Army Hollow. The map shows the recreation area, the outer ring, the zone of 2 US 3 levels, the middle ring, the zone of 4 levels, the inner ring, the zone of the 5th level. A squad of people from level 3 to 5 fight insect-like monsters. Ant Army Hollow, middle ring. The bespectacled guy shouted to the captain that his mana was about to run out and the potion was also used up. He offered to retreat. The captain, swinging his sword, replied that they were in the middle ring and the highest rank of ants here would not exceed the 4th level. He said they could handle it and they would retreat after they dealt with this wave, hitting the ants with his shield. The orc noted that they had leveled up in 3 days. He suggested that they try out the inner ring tomorrow and then they would get rich from the items from there. Something green flew right in front of his face. It was an arrow that pierced right through the ant's head. The archer told him not to even think about going to the inner ring. She said that all the ants are in the inner circle of the 5th level and they will attack in groups. She asked if he thought it would be the same as the middle circle. The thief, brandishing a dagger, said that there is a rule in Sky Valley that prohibits players from entering places on maps that are higher in the player's personal level. He said that they were lucky to be able to reach the 5th level in the middle ring. He said that he had heard that the players who currently enter the inner ring are members of the 5th level elite groups of the top 5 guilds. All of them have level 5 equipment, and they have at least 2 healer magicians to restore the tank's health, which will plummet. The thief, with a serious face, said that everyone knows that good items fall in the inner circle, but you need to be able to deal with it. The elite teams of the top 5 guilds only went there for the sake of items. The orc raised his sword up and shouted for the others to focus on the monsters, saying that they were almost done. The archer noticed something in the other direction. She told them to take a look and asked if she was the only one who saw it. Ling Kuei used his dagger to kill the approaching ants. She noticed the 1st level above his head. The main character cut the ant in half with a swing of his dagger. They were surprised to find that he was a level 1 thief. When his face was serious, they stared at him in surprise, not understanding how he did it or how he got here. The archer screamed, telling them to watch where he was going. Lin Si was walking towards the inner circle. When he reached the edge of the circle, the main character jumped down. His eye glowed red. There were many level 5 ants below, and the group asked if he was crazy. Linny walks along a busy street. People on the street sell and buy items. Looking around, the main character thought that he was on the spot. A voice near the gate tells you to be careful because the ant army will respond quickly, so it will be difficult to deal with them. Another voice said, don't be afraid because this is just the outer ring and they have strong priests with them. Map of the 5th level of the Ant Army Hollow. For players above the 5th level, the entrance is closed above the gate. Gradually increases. Lindy walks forward. The ants attacks in the inner ring, or a nightmare for players. The main character stands shrouded in yellow energy, and under his disguise you can see that he is wearing white armor. He thought that for him, the owner of items from a unique quest, this is the Perfect place to level up with a smirk, LQ thought. About how he would clear out the inner ring, and by the time a new group of monsters appeared he would surely have reached level 5. He thought that since their level was higher he would get good experience bonuses. The voice shouted that it was repeating it again. A hand grabbed the face of a level 4 guy with elf ears. The interface above his head was red in color. A girl with a sword on her back shouts not to even think about going back for lost equipment, and that first you need to get a new level. She told the guy to be brave. She shouted that he already had a red name and still dared to come here. The others watched in silence. The girl's face tightened with anger and a vein swelled in her forehead. She asked if he was aware that the penalty for a red name is to drop a random piece of equipment at death. She said that they had disgraced their guild. The text on the red dialogue box was crossed out with a large cross. The guy crouching down replied that before that all he had done was clean up the middle ring with the team, but he could not imagine that there would be so many ants in the inner ring. He said that the difference between the middle and inner rings was too big, and it would cost him dearly. The black-haired guy sighed and told him that the difficulty of the inner ring should not be underestimated and one should be careful. Even as a level 5 team, he said that their entire group could have died because of his mistake. He told him that he was now a level 4 guy after losing 1 level, so they were no longer a level 5 group. He asked if he still wanted to go back for the item he had lost. Len Si walks past them. The guy with the dark hair said they were going to die one day because of him. The protagonist paid attention to the words about the Misty Cliff Guild and remembered that it was one of the 5 great guilds. He thought that it looked like only the talented players from the Great 5 Alliance had the strength to enter here. So far, the guy sitting on the ground called Lindy, angrily calling him a level 1 thief, and asked if he liked eavesdropping on other people's conversations. A sword blade blocked his path, and the girl said she would give him some advice. She said that there was no need to go there and die in it wasn't a place for a level 1 like him to gain experience. Frowning, she said that if he came here thinking he was lucky enough, it would just be a waste of his time. She said that it was better for him to go to a level 1 or 2 location and raise his level. Ling Q thought that it seemed that the people from the Misty Cliff Guild weren't bad and they were better behaved than some of them. He lowered the girl's sword with his hand and asked what if he told her that he would bring them the item they had left there and sell it. The blonde-haired guy raised an eyebrow in surprise and asked if Lin's head was fine. The girl gritted her teeth in exasperation and said that she didn't have time to joke with him. She asked about him being a level 1 thief and wanting to enter the inner circle and help them get their equipment back. Lind, he folded his arms and said that he did and he needed the money. He asked where they had lost the item and if anyone else could have picked it up. The dark-haired guy replied that he should still be there because at that moment, in order to find a better position to fight the monsters, they specially chose a rock in the inner circle. The guy said that after being surrounded by ants, his 5th level Flame Sepia staff fell out right there. He said the sun would be setting soon and there was no one else in the inner circle when they left, so no one would pick him up. Gritting her teeth, the girl asked Lindy if he was serious. The green kappa guy agreed with her with a frown and said that even if he had the invisibility potion, he still wouldn't be able to take it out. He said that the potion's effect would end before he could get in and out. The main character in front of them was already gone, and it wasn't him who said that they didn't need to worry about him because he had already considered these situations. The girl furiously asked where he had gone. Ling Si walks towards the inner circle and raises his hand, telling them to rest, remember to pay him, and never leave until he returns. The girl asked if he understood human language. The blonde-haired guy asked if he was joking. A guy with dark hair asked the captain how much they should pay him. As she tucked the sword behind her back, she asked if he seriously believed that a level 1 thief would be able to return their item to them, and if his head was okay. Lindy walks through the outer circle surrounded by people fighting. One voice asks to restore his health because he almost died. Another voice shouted that he didn't have any mana. Another voice asks the mage to cover him. Langy thought that there were a lot of people raising their level here. He decided to run directly to the inner circle. A dagger appeared in his hand. Frowning, he thought that he should reach the 5th level today. He ran forward. A dialogue box announced that the ants had appeared. 2 level 3 ants appeared in front of the main character L. He cut the ants in half with a single swing of his dagger. The guy blocks the ants' attacks with his sword, and the mage behind him says that his fireball is almost ready. They were surprised to find that the ant in front of them had been chopped in half. They turned around in surprise, not understanding what it was. Lin Si runs towards the level for ant, thinking that he has reached the middle circle using a backstab. The main character was in the air above the middle circle. He smiled contentedly. The orc with the sword shouted for the others to focus on the monsters and said that they were almost done. The archer pointed to the side and asked everyone to look. There she called out to see where the level 1 thief was going and said it was the inner circle. They asked if he was mad. Ling Qi jumped into the inner circle, which was filled with a lot of ants. He jumped down where the ants immediately charged at him, dealing 1 point of damage each. The main character swirled in a swirl of blows with yellow energy, chopping and scattering the ants around. The dialogue box announced that it had reached the 2nd level. Gritting his teeth, he thought about how the inner circle really gave a lot of experience. Frowning, he decided that since there was no one else here, he would take The opportunity to kill all the ants. The voice said that it was getting dark and they should go back. He added that the ants in the middle circle are almost all dead. Another voice called out to look at the inner circle. A crowd of people stood at the border of the inner circle where the ground was littered with dead ants. The orc asked what had happened. The archer said that these corpses were all level 5 ants. A voice in the crowd said that he saw with his own eyes that he was level 1. When he came here, the blonde-haired guy exclaimed in surprise that the thief was still alive. He was surprised to say that it cleared the inner circle by himself, gaining extra experience for having enemies that surpassed his level. The archer said that he had already raised his level from 1st to 5th. A guy in the crowd said that it hasn't been long and he's already raised his level from 1st to 5th and he's terrifyingly strong. Another voice in the crowd said that he was probably hiding what kind of equipment he had. Linde is sitting on a rock with a fire staff in his hand. He said it had to be that staff. There were many dead ants around him. Grinning, he said that he had finally reached the 5th level. The dialogue box says, since you have reached the 5th level, the effect of the excellent suit is terminated. You've lost an excellent suit on a white pole in the recreation area. The captain called her group to follow her and said that it was getting dark and it was time to pack up and leave. She said that even they would find it difficult to fight the ants at night. The blonde-haired guy retorted that Lee hadn't returned yet and there was still a possibility that he would return his staff. The girl frowned in annoyance. She grabbed his collar and said that she was warning him once again that even if their guild was ranked 3rd, it was still one of the top guilds. Holding him by the neck, she forcefully pressed him to her chest and asked about how, omitting the fact that he had lost his equipment, he expected a level 1 novice to return the after him. She asked him if he was ashamed. Pale and trembling, he agreed and said he couldn't breathe. The captain released him and folded her arms across her chest, telling him to wipe the expectant look off his face. The guy with the dark hair looked at them and thought that he also wanted to lose his equipment and get such a punishment. The blonde-haired guy was holding his neck, clearing his throat, and said it was hard not to believe in him because of the look in his eyes. When he said he would return the staff to them, he recalled Lindsay's calm expression. The captain protested that she thought he looked like an fool. She asked what the 1st level could do. People nearby were discussing Lee See. One guy said that he hid his personal information, but he raised his level from 1st to 5th in one goal. Another said that the Sky Valley forum was exploding with comments. The bald guy said that he had never seen anything like it since the launch of this game. The guy in the green hat noticed their discussion and told the captain that something interesting was going on here. There were several topics on the forum about how Ling Si had cleared the inner circle by himself. The captain said that she had only just noticed that everyone who had returned from the inner circle was talking about it. She asked what had happened there. A guy in the crowd pointed his finger forward and said he thought it was him. The guy next to him agreed. The captain turned around and Ling Qi was standing behind her, covered in the blood of ants. He held their staff in his hand and asked with a smile how much they were willing to offer for it. The captain was surprised to recognize him as Lindy and was surprised that he had already reached the 5th level. The main character said that even if they don't recognize it, they should recognize this staff. The blonde-haired guy exclaimed that it was his staff and he actually returned it. The captain asked how he had reached level 5 in one evening. Link replied that he was just clearing out the ants in the inner circle. He said that it gives a lot of experience because of the high level of monsters, not to mention the number of them. He added that if they had special equipment, they would also be able to. He handed the staff to the blonde-haired boy, who happily thanked him. He said that he only had 3 silver coins and he was giving him all of them. Frowning, the captain thought that even putting aside the question of where he got the special equipment, he still needed to have sufficient technical skill to face such a terrifying army of ants. The dialogue box announced that he had received 3 silver coins. Lindy said that it was a pleasure to deal with them. The blonde-haired boy was hugging his staff lovingly. The captain asked Lindy to wait and asked if he had already joined the guild. She said that they are one of the 5 main guilds. Misty Cliff, a guy in the crowd, said that he really wanted to ask him to add him as a friend. The captain called out to him that if he was interested, she could recommend him to the guild head so that he could pass the entry test. Early LQ thought about joining a guild that he couldn't even touch in his previous life, the Misty Cliff Guild. In the protagonist's previous life, it was also one of the 5 main guilds. When he started playing, these guilds were already full. Players were proud to be part of 5 large guilds. In his previous life, Lindy had spent 2 years trying to reach the maximum level. After unlocking the pet system, the time it takes to level up is noticeably reduced, thus becoming a member of one of the top 5 guilds is something to be proud of. In his previous life, his only goal was to reach the maximum level, so it only took him 2 years. One reason for this is that unlocking the pet system significantly reduces the difficulty of leveling up. Another reason is that he completely ignored things like advanced equipment and special missions. Thus, after studying countless player manuals and finding a way to level up that was most suitable for him, Lindy managed to reach the maximum level in a short period of time, especially because he is relatively good at games, because he can start earning money for existence only after reaching the maximum level. In the past, joining a guild was something incredible for him. With a wave of his hand, Lindy thanked him for the offer and declined waving his cloak. He thought that he would definitely join the guild sooner or later, but it was up to fate to decide which one. He decided that now he needed to get the right set of equipment. The main town of Casa, the village of beginners, people surrounded Ling Si, asking him to help them level up or join their group. The brown-haired girl asked if he needed a healer and said he could be a tank. The main character apologized and said that he didn't have time to help them. He thought about how the 5th level really made others treat him bad. The guys are standing near the counter of the store. The guy in the helmet asks if they think the thief they saw earlier in the day will come here again. The purple-haired guy said he was even waiting for him to come back. He said that he was acting presumptuously, not even understanding the complexity of the Heavenly Valley. The guy with the dark hair said he didn't think he was coming. He asked why he would come back just to embarrass himself. Lindy said that they were still here and asked why they hadn't gone up a single level. The boys glanced in his direction. They were surprised to realized that Lee was standing in front of them and found that he had reached the 5th level. The main character said that they met again. They exclaimed that his level had risen very quickly. Lin Si walked over to the counter. The merchant asked what she could do for him. This time he replied that he wanted to sell some items. The dialogue box asked if he was sure he wanted to sell all 12 selected items. The dialogue box says exchange successful. You have received 30 silver coins, 66 bronze coins. Links, he thought about selling the unwanted items and preparing for the next target. He asked for 20 in hand end incendiaries and 3 simple invisibility potions. The dialogue box announced that he had received 20 incendiaries and 3 simple invisibility potions. The saleswoman winked and thanked him for the purchase. She said that all the items were moved to his inventory. Link Kyu decided to buy temporary weapons from an arms dealer in the neighborhood. The gun salesman, showing off his muscles, asked if he needed help. Peeking out from behind the counter, a female insect stands in the dark surrounded by ants. In Ling's previous life, players discovered that there was a nest near the ant army's hollow, and it was an unmarked checkpoint, the Ant Queen's nest. After clearing the Ant Queen's nest, the level 5 dungeon will be upgraded, and the hidden dark forest dungeon will appear. This was also discovered by players 5 months after the launch of Valley, and all this is required in order to get the strongest set of equipment for a thief up to the 10th level in the Dark Forest. Ants Lingku thought that there were a lot of ants here, but in his previous life, after many attempts, the players found a dishonest way to quickly get past the ants. The main character drank a purple potion. The dialogue box says simple stealth potion activated. The user will become invisible. The higher the enemy's perception, the easier it will be for them to detect the user. Effect duration 9 seconds. Frowning, he decided to proceed with quick leaps. Lindy made his way down the rocks past the ants. Another invisibility potion appeared in the protagonist's hand. The dialogue box announced that the effect of the simple invisibility potion had ended. The ant was surprised to find that a running Link had appeared in front of it. Lindy disappeared before his eyes, and a dialogue box announced that the simple invisible the ability potion had been activated. The ants opened their toothy mouths angrily. The dialogue box drew attention to the fact that it attracted the hatred of a large number of his teeth. Lingkuo thought that this was the last potion. He runs away from a crowd of angry ants. Seeing the silhouette of the Ant Queen in front of him, he thought that he had almost arrived at his destination. The Ant Queen was a woman with green hair above her waist, and below her waist a huge insect with a separate mouth. Lingkuo thought about how he had finally met her. Frowning, he noticed 2 ants jumping on top of him. He thought about how now he just needed to use the ant sphere of fire. He threw several Molotov cocktails in front of him. The ants were standing in front of a wall of fire, and some of them were burned in it. Ants are vulnerable to fire, so fire attacks have a damage multiplier. Lindy was separated from the ants by a wall of fire. He thought about how even though the queen ant has a lot of health, it doesn't have any attacks, and its entire existence is to endlessly create ants to protect it. He thought that the ants were now separated by a wall of fire, and the ant queen was completely useless. Gritting her teeth, the queen called him a vile man holding 6 Molotov cocktails in his hands. Lin said that it was better for them to fight one-on-one. With a sinister smile, he told her that it was her fault for being such an easy target. He told her not to blame him for being mean. LQ said that the incendiary mixtures he had prepared for her would be more than enough for her. The Ant Queen frowned and cursed, the veins on her face bulging. She screamed loudly. The dialogue box congratulated the main character on killing the Ant Queen. The head of the council by level 9 Misty Cliff Guild straightened his tie and said that he thought they had found some hidden items or a special NPC. Frowning, he asked Dae if she had the need for such drastic measures. D replied that he wasn't there at the time, so he wouldn't understand. She said that this thief is really intimidating and raised his level from 1st to 5th in just a day, and they need to stop putting her in a difficult position. Tiana told her that if this thief is as good as she says, then she should invite him to take the guild entrance test. Spreading her palms out, she said that the game hadn't started so long ago, and there were too many people willing to join the guild and he would get his chance. Dea, scratching her head, agreed with her and said that she was excited because she wanted him to be in her group. Tiana said that she understood everything. Dae thought that Tiana was very beautiful and gentle no matter what she did. She thought that it was rare to see a beautiful female beastman like her. Tiana was smiling, wearing a large wizard's hat with a red bow that revealed animal ears. They found a dialogue box with A universal alert, the dialogue box says a player who hid his personal information has cleaned out the queen's nest and attracted the hatred of the insect tribe. The dialogue box announced that the hidden location of the 5th level dark forest was opened via I was surprised by the hidden location of the 5th level Wasabi K exclaimed in surprise that he had cleared the area alone and asked who this incredible player was. He said that according to the announcement it was after clearing the queen ant's nest alone. He said that the player was a professional and asked what guild he was. From Tiana, frowning nervously, told them to calm down because this announcement will be received by all players and they will all run to the hidden location of the 1st level that has opened. She said that they should hurry there to find promising talents. By Lee looked at her in fascination and jumped up from his chair and said that she was right and they didn't have time to sit idly. By he shouted that it was time for them to go to the dark forest, regardless of whether it was the Misty Cliff Guild or any other guild. Even the players roaming the streets were surprised by the message people on the street. Look at the dialogue boxes in front of them, wondering at the hidden location. The hooded man at the table asked the pink-haired girl if she would go to a hidden location. The beer guy asked in displeasure why a level 5 location only appeared now. Another guy asked him if he thought there would be special equipment or materials. A line of people lined up in front of the store. The guy said that he needed to buy potions and go to the location as soon as possible. The girl with the bow said that she wouldn't even be able to squeeze through, even if it was too late. The guy pushes the guy in the red wizard hat, saying that the other guilds have been there for a long time. The guy opening the yellow portal in front of him said that opening the portal takes time. The other guy was surprised at what kind of godlike professional had cleaned out this location. Countless conversations of players were on every corner and everyone was excited about the location that had just opened up. Dark forest entrance to the location, surrounded by people. A huge white crystal floated in the air. As Link Kua was leaving the teleport, he said that he had arrived. Noticing the people, he thought that as expected there were already plenty of players here. He remembered that this quest was a special team task and there would only be more and more players. The guy asked in surprise that there are no restrictions on the difference in level. The guy running after him said that it was and told him to hurry up and follow him because players of level 5 and below can enter and his companions are waiting for him. Lindsay thought that as he remembered, since the dark forest is a hidden location, there should usually be special conditions or rules, but this time the condition is to allow teams to have no limit on the level difference. The only restriction is that players above the 5th level will not be able to enter the location. The guy urged his companions to pass the lowest difficulty to quickly take out some items. Turning around, Link Kuo thought about how he had already prepared all the items and equipment for his group, and now he needed to find 4 people to form a group. He decided to look for people near the crystal. The dialogue box says you have accepted the dark forest quest. Now you can use the portal to the location. He thought about how the yellow portals nearby were low difficulty. The people behind him enter the yellow portals. Someone shouted that they had discovered a gold portal of increased difficulty. The guy in the red wizard hat shouted that the final boss of increased difficulty has a mutation phase. He shouted to report it to the heads immediately. The other guy swore and said that they had lost 2 comrades and were almost killed. A person in the crowd asked if the increased difficulty was really that difficulty. Elfeed guy slammed his fist into the ground and cursed. He said that their equipment couldn't handle this dungeon. He said that the level 5 armor couldn't even withstand the boss' normal attacks and its armor penetration was too strong. A guy in the crowd said that it was one of the members of the 5 major guilds, Celestial. He said that when the portal first opened, they ran into it without slowing down. Another guy said that not only did the 5 major guilds come here, but other guilds also came here. He said that some people have already passed the lower and middle difficulties, but no one has been able to pass the higher one yet. He said that there was nothing to say about special and crazy difficulties. It will be at least a week before people even try to pass them. He said that this place would soon become a place for guilds to compete with each other. The first few weeks will be full of guilds trying to break the record for completing a location, just like every other time a new location is opened. He said that soon solo players will have nothing to do. Link Q thought of the solo players. A guy from the crowd shouted that the representatives of the 5 major guilds that are responsible for finding new players had also come. He said they were watching them from the edge of the location and they were all level 8 and 9 professionals. Chana sits at the table laughing. Wasabi Can said that this time they need to find really good players. By looking through the telescope, said that all the good ones were taken away by other guilds. Last time he thought with a crazy smile that if he found promising talents and collected enough guild contribution points, he could apply to join the 2nd tier. He imagined Tiana admiring him. Bai thought about how Tiana had always rejected him, but when he entered the 2nd tier, she wouldn't be able to reject him. Tiana called out to B, who was lost in his fantasies. He responded grinning. She said that the other guilds had also come. She said that they would leave the important task of setting records for completing the location to the 1st and 2nd echelons. She said with a smile that their job as the 3rd echelon is to find good newcomers. B said that the hidden location has attracted a lot of players, and he believes that there will be many promising talents here. Looking into the distance, Chana agreed and said that among so many players they should definitely be found. She wondered if the thief Dara had mentioned would come here. She said she wanted to meet Someone was surprised at how many people there are here and said that this is the entrance to the location. The guy with short hair chuckled and said that he would show them something good. Another guy said that he knew a lot of players and that there might be a friend of his who would be willing to help them. The elf said that all the players want to form a group. She smiled with a wink and said she couldn't wait to raise a level or two. The boys responded by telling her to rely on them when she noticed them and said it was them again. The elf recognized him and was surprised. They jumped back from him and asked why he was here too. Closing his eyes, the main character said that he should ask them because this is a 5th level location. Opening one eye slightly, he said that this location required 5 people and noted that they were missing one. The elf noticed with surprise that he was already level 5. She looked at him admiringly and said he was cool. She asked if he came here because he missed her. The short-haired guy gritted his teeth furiously, asking how he was able to reach level 5 in one day. The guy with the elf ears sighed wearily, and the guy in the green hood thought that he was cool. He asked if they wanted to go through this location and said that he would help them pass it. He thought that if he was looking for other people, he would have to spend his time explaining. They exclaimed in surprise if he really wanted to help them. The guy with the elf ears said that he should know that he shouldn't rely on luck when completing locations. Lindy asked if they wanted to go through the location or not. Gritting his teeth, the elf-eyed boy asked if he was confident that he could pass it. He said he would have to pay them compensation if they were killed. Closing his eyes, the main character replied that this is not a problem, but he has one condition. He said that they should hide the information about their group for 3 days. The guy with the elf ears asked why they would do that and said that only a fool wouldn't want attention. Raising his index finger, LQ replied that as compensation after completing the location, he would only take one piece of equipment and they could take everything else. The dialogue box in front of them says that the player invited them to form a team. The dialogue box asked if they want to accept or reject the invitation. The bright-eyed elf agreed without hesitation. The 3 guys stared at the dialogue box, unsure of what to do. They accepted. The elf thought happily that she had finally found someone to rely on to level up. Engi called them to follow him and told them that he would choose a portal. The guy with the short hair asked if they needed to discuss strategy, and if he knew exactly what he was doing. He opened his mouth in surprise. Linquest stood in front of the dark red portal and said that he would explain after they went inside. The short-haired guy exclaimed in surprise when he noticed the dark red portal. Petrified with surprise, they exclaimed that they had been tricked and they would go through a crazy difficulty. Lenny grinned confidently. The dungeon difficulty crazy, no record. The dungeon quest will be issued in 3 seconds. Please prepare yourself. Bai exclaimed in surprise as he looked through the telescope. He asked what was going on and why there were so many people there. He told Tana that she needed to see it too. Bai asked if he saw the color correctly looking through her binoculars. Tiana asked where and what the crowd was looking at. A crowd of people gathered around something. She asked if they were looking at the portal and saw that a crowd of people had gathered around the dark red portal. Tiana said in surprise that it was a dark red portal. B pointed his finger forward and exclaimed that it was impossible and someone decided to challenge the insane difficulty. He shouted that the dungeon had only recently opened, but someone had the skills and courage to challenge the insane difficulty. Gritting his teeth, B asked what kind of guild it was. Wasabi K asked if it could be the guild members in the first place. He said that the Dark Forest had only recently opened and the only people capable of doing so were most likely their first division. The guy with the elf ears assumed that they were a group of solo players who had randomly chosen an insane difficulty. The red cloak armor guy said that he had seen many such groups who wanted to try their luck. B agreed, saying that such situations are not uncommon. He asked Tiana what she thought. Tiana said it made sense. B laughed and said that it couldn't be any other way. Tiana thought that even if it was true, they wouldn't be able to pass this dungeon. She said they should go and take a look. People in the crowd shouted in surprise that this was an insane difficulty. A man in the crowd asked if anyone had seen whose band it was and what classes and equipment they had. Another person asked if they were members of the 5 major guilds or just solo players who decided to try their luck. Another person said that even the members of Celestial wouldn't pass the increased difficulty and they certainly wouldn't be able to with their equipment. The brown-haired guy looking around said that the crowd was getting bigger and this time they would embarrass themselves greatly. He told the main character that they should enter the dungeon faster, and he didn't care if it was of insane difficulty. A man in the crowd laughed and said that they were probably just solo players who had decided to go sightseeing. Landy closed his eyes and offered to go. A guy in the crowd exclaimed in surprise when he noticed the members of the Nebulous Guild. Tiana said there were a lot of people here. Bai asked people to let them pass. The fat guy exclaimed in surprise when he asked if there was a need for such a crowd around something so mundane. Tiana raised her eyebrows awkwardly and said they'd have to squeeze through. I thought that solo players were annoying because he had to squeeze through this crowd. The fat guy said with a smile that there was no need for them to squeeze and because they had already entered the dungeon and he had already asked around for information and found out that this group was formed from solo players. B said that just like he said they were solo players. The guy agreed and said how dare they bother the captain with an awkward smile. The guy said that he had recently applied to join their guild. B turned away, asked who he was in. displeasure and said that if he wanted to join the guild he had to follow the correct procedure. The guy smiled awkwardly in agreement and asked me to put in a good word for him. B thought discontentedly that this fat man could only dream of joining their guild. He motioned for the others to move on. The guy gritted his teeth and thought he could look down on people just because he had a bit of power. The guy with dark skin and elf ears asked if it was BB, turned around in displeasure and asked who it was. This time above the dark-skinned elf's head, the 10th level could be seen. And above the girl's head next to it, the 9th, he said that the people from the Nebulous Guild are always rushing to recruit people, but they never managed to accept even one person. A guy in the crowd exclaimed that it was a third-rank guild. Wolf Fang, another guy, exclaimed that there were now 3 of the 5 main guilds here. BY gritted his teeth in exasperation. The dark-haired guy asked if Wolf's F was ranked 3rd, which Nebulous and Celestial were better. The guy with long blonde hair replied that Celestial is ranked 4th, but Nebulous is not to be underestimated, and it was created recently, and he heard that their head is a very strong person. He said that the 3rd guild, Wolf's Fang, just likes to make things difficult for Nebulous. The dark-skinned elf smirked and said that they had heard that people from Celestial had also come, so they were given the order to join in. He told Bai that he didn't need to worry, and this time they wouldn't steal newbies from under their noses. B gritted his teeth in exasperation and clenched his fists. Tiana put her hand on his shoulder and told him to calm down with a smile, because this is not a good place to argue with them. She told him not to let others shame them. The red-haired girl pointed her finger at Tiana and said that she remembered that she was a mage from the latest monthly guild wars. Tiana asked if she remembered her touching her chin. The girl grinned and said that she remembered. She said she was a bee woman, adding that she had terrible taste. Laughing, she said that she wished she had killed her last time. Tiana said she didn't remember her at all. The girl frowned in annoyance and asked what she had just said. Tiana calmly turned away and said that it was difficult for her to remember people with such an ordinary face. The girl pointed furiously at Tana and asked what she meant. Tana called B to go on. Bai sneered maliciously as he clasped his hands behind his back. The girl shouted for her to repeat what she said again. Tiana turned around and added that not all women rely on men as much as she does all the time. She suggested that they all work hard. The girl gritted her teeth angrily and swore the dark-skinned elf stared with fascination. BY said with a smirk that they were leaving. The girl, shaking with anger, clicked her tongue and said that she had a sharp tongue. The elf grinned and said it wasn't a problem. He said that the next monthly guild wars is still a week away and they will just focus on killing her so that she will lose a few levels. The girl looked at him with a grim grin and said she was counting on him. Scratching his head, he said that he had heard that a portal of insane difficulty was activated by a group of solo players. The girl said that she thought they were people from some guild and they should go back and report it. He replied that there was no need to hurry and they had better gather information about the dungeon before heading back. He said that they would just catch and ask them after they came out of the dungeon. He called her to go dark forest. Inside the dungeon, a guy with short hair was pointing angrily at the main character, shouting if he was crazy because it was a scam. He asked if he knew what crazy complexity meant. The guy with the elf ears folded his arms and said that even the people from Celestial couldn't pass the increased difficulty. The guy in the green hood said that this dungeon is big. The elf said that she would definitely be able to level up here. The guy with the elf ears asked if he had brought them here to feed the monsters. The guy with short hair shouted that he didn't understand anything after all, and he was just lucky enough to somehow get the 5th level, and now he thinks that he is an immortal. The main character stood with his back to them, looking at the game interface in front of him. Turning around, he asked if they were done complaining. He said they would attract bug monsters if they kept yelling. Ling Si added that the artificial intelligence in this game is quite advanced. A guy with short hair asked what they would do. He asked if they would get out of the dungeon and said that he should know that death takes away experience. The elf protested that they were only teaming up. She thought irritably that she was level 1 and she wasn't afraid to lose experience. She wanted experience and no one was allowed to go out. The main character calmly said that he had already sent them items and they would be able to get them through the group interface. He added that it was an equipment that he had chosen based on their classes and it was better suited for this dungeon. The dialogue box reported that the items were sent. They opened the interface and the main character told them to put on items. The guy with short hair was surprised to receive Fur Scatter Arm Guard. The elf was surprised to receive Red Reverent Healing Staff. The guy with the elf ears got a robe of waning fire. The guy with green hair got Blazing Thief's leather armor. The dialogue box reported that the items were received. The guy with the elf ears said that all of these items can be worn at their level and equipment with elemental attributes should cost at least 10 silver in the early game. The short-haired guy exclaimed in surprise that all these equipment had fire attacks. The hooded guy thought that he couldn't help but admire the main character. The elf asked in surprise where he got so much equipment. Langi said that after killing so many monsters they should at least drop some equipment. He said that bugs are vulnerable to fire, and now the fire damage they will receive from the equipment will help them significantly increase their damage. The bright-eyed elf exclaimed that she couldn't wait. She yelled for everyone to put on their gear, and they agreed. The elf looked at her fire staff in awe, shouting about how good it looked. A guy with short Hair looking at the fire on his wrist shoe about the power of the king. The elfied boy was looking at the fire on his chest with a satisfied grin. He said that even with all this gear, it's still an insane challenge. A guy with short hair shouted that he was getting prettier. The elf called out to him to transform. Langy, with an indifferent face, said to distribute strong Molotov cocktails. In front of him was a crate full of Molotov cocktails. The guy asked irritably if he was a merchant. He replied that he could only carry 60 bottles and told everyone to take 15 bottles because they would be useful to them for the boss. The short-haired guy asked in surprise if he had a plan and what they would do with the monsters along the way. The main character replied that he would tell them what to do along the way. He thought that he had put all his stat points into dexterity in the early game, and after getting level 5, he distributed the points more evenly, and his level was exactly enough to put on this set of level 5 equipment. He clicked the confirm button on the dialog box and thought that he had specially prepared this set of equipment for the dark forest, spending a fortune on it. Surrounded by the lights, he grinned. He was wearing armor that was shrouded in flames. The green hooded guy exclaimed in surprise and asked if the most expensive equipment in Lai's shop was the fire equipment set for a level 5 thief. The main character was standing there wearing clothes shrouded in fire, and the guy exclaimed that it was a starfire set. Langy said that if they want to pass the dungeon in this game, they need to learn something first. He said that each dungeon has its own characteristics. The hooded guy looked on with a serious face. The guy with elf ears grinned. The elf girl smiled confidently, and the guy with short hair frowned seriously. The main character grinned and said that where there are features, there are weaknesses. And by finding weaknesses, they can win. He said that this is why the so-called insane difficulty is not completely impassable. They went forward. The elf held up her staff, winked, and urged them to move forward. Langsi raised his hand and urged them to be the first to pass the insane difficulty through observation. People discovered that the insect race in Heavenland is a race with a very strong sense of danger, so when they sense danger, they choose to hide or run away. These are words from the 3rd volume of Heavenland. Insect observation. Rays of light shay through the foliage of trees in a forest full of fireflies. A common dark forest monster is jagged side mantis. The elf called out to everyone to take a look. Jagged seas mantis, who looked like a beautiful girl with short white hair, came out of the bushes. She exclaimed that she was cute. The main character lowered her head, telling her to lower herself. He asked her if she could see the loot in her hand. The man's arm pierced through the animal's body. Langy asked if she wanted to, so that it would be the same with her. The mantis ran away. The boy with the elf ears exclaimed that she had run away. The hooded guy said that insects are very vigilant. The elf said that this mains looked very cute. The main character said that if it was seen for even one more second, it would attract a lot of monsters. The hooded guy asked him how they could defeat the monsters, because even if their race is very fragile, their attack and speed are very high. The short-haired guy noticed in surprise that he called him boss. The hooded guy said that all monsters on insane difficulty have extra health, attack, and defense, and the insect race's attacks deal cutting damage that lowers the target's health over time, and after a few of their attacks, they will die from this damage. The main character agreed and said that they wouldn't fight all the monsters directly. He said that in the dark forest there are circular zones connected to each other, and each circle marks a different zone. He drew 3 circles on the ground above which was written boss, spider zone, moth zone, and man zone length. He said that they usually need to clear these 3 zones to get to the boss. He listed the monsters that protected these zones. The mantises, they had just seen the moths, and the spiders. He imagined a brown silhouette of a moth with sharp claws and a purple silhouette of a spider with many fangs frowning. The protagonist added that there is another special creature, a neutral monster, the weeping birds. The boys exclaimed in surprise, and the elf girl with bright eyes and a smile said that it sounded really cute. They must be expensive, she thought. The main character said that this bird is the key to completing this dungeon. He said that by using the insect race's predatory instinct and hidden path, they should easily reach the boss area. The elf imitated a bird, flapping its arms like wings and making a bird-like sound, and asked if they thought they would make such a sound. The boy with the elf ears grinned and agreed. The guy with the short hair laughed charmingly and said that they would probably be cute like her. The hooded guy said that he should write down the strategies for completing the dungeon. The main character looked at them with displeasure and said that he would not repeat it, so they should stop fooling around and listen. He thought that as he thought they were making him worry, he told them to let him know their names for easy communication. The dialogue box was filled with a request to see the player's personal information. The hooded guy chuckled awkwardly and said that his nickname was Invincible J Drama Run, and they could just call him J Run. The guy with the short hair said indifferently that he was a fan of Japanese TV shows. The name bone-piercing, no loneliness, heartbreaking, no sadness appeared above the guy with owl ears. With a smug smile, he told them to call him that. The main character thought it was a shameful anti-mainstream name. He said they would call it anti-mainstream. He shouted irritably that he wasn't anti-mainstream. The short-haired guy frowned and said his nickname was Long Handsome Face, so they could call him Long Face. The elf girl winked with a smile and said that they could call her Zol. Then she said she likes money and strong guys. The boys asked her charmingly if she was talking about them. The main character called to go to the next step to find the weeping bird, noticing a yellow bird with big eyes. The elf asked to wait and asked if it was a weeping bird. The main character was sitting on a tree branch grabbing a screaming bird by the paw. The nestlings in the hollow nearby were screaming. The elf pointed an angry finger at the bird. Anti-mainstream said the name didn't suit her at all. Laney, putting his arm around the bird that was chirping in embarrassment, told it not to be afraid and that he would give it good bugs. The elf asked why they were feeding her. The dialogue box reported that the bird was happy. The main character smiled and said that by feeding her the bugs they found on the road to show goodwill, they would get the item. The dialogue box congratulated you on getting the hidden item Weeping Flute. It described the item, a gift from Weeping Bird in honor of friendship. It can make a pleasant chirping sound, but for some insects it is a danger signal. The elf said with a frown that she didn't think such an ugly bird would have a hidden item. Raising his palm up, the main character said that there are no useless NPCs in this game, and the only question is whether someone discovered their benefits or not. Run was taking notes in a book-long face, asked if they were returning to the man area holding a flute in his hand. The protagonist replied that with this flute they would be able to get to the boss via short path. He added that it would be a bit problematic. Ron asked how he knew these tricks and if he had any experience with this flute. Longface noticed in surprise that he called him boss again. Lynx, he thought that he couldn't tell them that he had already cleared this dungeon countless times in his previous life. He said that before coming here he went to the main library of the city of Casado and read some books about insect observation, and they have information, he said, that it can only be used after reading it. He said that, for example, this flute and its insect repellent effect wouldn't do anything without knowing about them. Run, writing down notes, said that he could not even think that in the library you can learn such things. Anti-mainstream said he thought the library existed just for show and didn't know it could be used that way. Lan yawned and said that reading books was boring. The main character opened the map and told them to open the map and take a good look. He said that the area on the side of the map is a swamp and the fox is surrounded by it. He said that normally no one would walk in the swamp. He explained that this is because he never knows this road and you can get lost there at any time, because the monsters there are scattered without regularity and it is not as safe as on a normal road. Anti-mainstream asked if he meant to say that this shortcut is not safe. He asked if he was sending them to their deaths. Lan drew attention to herself by swinging her staff length. She replied that Weeping Bird is a monster that specializes in hunting monsters of the insect race, and it is their natural enemy, and the flute is able to make their sound striking terror into insects. Zolan happily raised the staff on her head, exclaiming that they had obtained the items and a shortcut. She urged them to move on, looking at the swampy slush under her feet with the displeased face. She asked if this was the only way. She asked what the shortcut was. Zolan raised her staff and shouted in displeasure, "Why are they forcing such a beautiful girl to walk through such a swamp?" The anti-mainstream noticed with displeasure that his magic robe was soaked. Longface said it was hard for him to walk as if he was dragging a huge rock behind him. Zolan shouted in displeasure that he was all dirty. The main character with a flute in his mouth asked if they wanted to go back and fight the monsters. Glancing at them with a frown, he said that if they didn't want to pay such a small price, they might not even think about going through the insane difficulty. He told them to be quiet and follow him because they were entering the monster zone. Lan sighed and said that her dress and feet were wet. She opened her eyes wide, noticing something. There were several huge spiders in front of her. The main character told her to be calm. Anti-mainstream gave the spiders a startled look and said they had a terrifying aura. The spider opened its mouth, baring its teeth above his head. It was written that it was a level 5 silk spider. They exclaimed that this was to be expected from an insane difficulty. Zolan called out in fright that they were coming. The main character started playing the flute and it made chirping sounds. Spider's eyes widened in alarm. They froze in place, trembling with fright. Longface said it actually worked. The anti-mainstream said they stopped moving. He said they seemed to be very afraid of the flute. The spiders quickly ran away. Run exclaimed enthusiastically. Anti-mainstream said he couldn't have imagined that these birds were so useful and all monsters of insane difficulty are afraid of them. He said they were their natural enemies for a reason. Frowning, the protagonist told them not to relax and quickly follow him. He said that this shortcut wasn't easy. They were completely relying on this flute, and if they got lost they would be attacked by all kinds of monsters in this dungeon. Many different monsters were perched on the branches above them. Lan said it was scary and they needed to get out of here as soon as possible. Looking up, Longface said they were sitting on top. The main character said that this is the price for a short trip. Once on the ground, he said that they had arrived and the area was safe. Climbing out of the swamp, Lan said that her entire body was covered in slippery mud. Face blushed and asked if she needed help. The dialogue box says, "You have selected the body cleaning function. You will become clean and sparkly." Longi said that everything went quite smoothly. Lan exclaimed in relief that they were finally on dry land. Longface said that Even though it was a short trip, it took them half an hour. The main character asked if they thought it wasn't worth it. Long face turned around in surprise. The dialogue box says, "Exploration successful. You have reached the dungeon boss's portal." In front of them was a huge dark red portal. Long face exclaimed in surprise that they had already arrived at the boss portal. The main character thought that this portal evokes memories. Anti-mainstream said that all of these monsters previously were very scary. He asked if they were really going to fight a boss of insane difficulty. Long face asked in fright if he had read anything in the library like the secret of clearing a dungeon without a boss fight. Grinning, he replied that they would have to use real skills to defeat the boss. Solon looked at him in surprise. They entered a dark red portal. On the other side of the portal was a huge monster. Mud Dragon, Lord of the Swamp. The red dialogue box says, "Level 5 subtle-grade drone. Place the Molotov cocktails on the ground." Wiping the sweat from his face, he opened the chat. Long face in the chat asked if they could see his message. J Run asked why he was typing if he could just use voice chat. He replied that everyone was very nervous right now, and he was afraid that he would scare them if he used voice chat. He asked if everything was ready on his side. J Run replied that it was ready. Long face was standing on a nearby cliff, putting Molotov cocktails on the ground and giving a thumbs up. J Run gave a thumbs up and said, "There was no problem." Longface said in the chat that Lingy happens to know the terrain of the boss territory. He asked how he knew so many details. He recalled how the main character had told them that they should memorize his next words. Standing in front of the sleeping boss, he told them that they would be able to defeat the boss directly with their current level and equipment. Zolan asked what they should do. Then turning around, he said that he had given them incendiary mixtures to throw at the boss when they were fighting. He explained that hitting 3 Molotov cocktails in a row will put a burning effect on the enemy, and Mud Dragon, Lord of the Swamp, is not only weak to fire but will also receive multiplied damage under the burning effect. Long face frowned and asked where they would throw Molotov cocktails from, because if they got close to him, he would kill them all with tail attacks. Zolan squeezed her eyes shut and said that it was too dangerous and she didn't want to do it. Long face added that the distance from which they can throw Molotov cocktails is limited. The main character replied that they didn't need to worry about it. Frowning, he said that he had already prepared a set of positions for them. The dialogue box says that he sent the map coordinates to his teammates. Looking ahead to the sleeping boss, he said that regarding the question of when to drop them, they just need to wait for his signal. J Run thoughtfully said that their boss must have quite a few friends who have already passed the lower difficulties of the dark forest, and so he probably knows all this information. He added that social connections are also one of his strengths, and he said that he would give them a signal. She asked him why he hadn't submitted it yet. Standing on a rock behind the boss, his arms outstretched, Mud Dragon was asleep. Linz, he said with a smirk that they hadn't seen each other for a long time, and he almost forgot how many times they had fought in his past life. He thought that after reaching the 5th level he had obtained the passive skill combo accumulation, and if his attacks were not interrupted by the enemy's attack, then he could accumulate attacks and use a special skill set of equipment with his new rush skill, like the ultimate trigger skill. Frowning, he opened his eyes wide. He leaped down, shouting for the boss to wake up and meet his death. A dagger appeared in his hand, leaving a trail of yellow energy in his wake. He slammed down hard on the boss back. His red eyes widened in annoyance. The dialogue box reported that he had disturbed the sleep of Mud Dragon, Lord of the Swamp. He let out a loud growl and asked how dare he, the vile man, disturb his sleep. The main character landed on the ground and after looking at him, said that they met again. Mud Dragon swung a paw at him. It dodged his attack and jumped onto his paw. He ran up it. The main character ran along the monster's paw, leaving a trail of fire behind him. The boss looked at him in surprise, and a green liquid sprayed out of his mouth. He spat. A green liquid sat him, and the protagonist dodged with a single jump. He said with a grin that he knew all his tricks like the back of his hand. As he approached the monster's huge claw, he said that he knew the limits of all its skills. As he landed on the huge black claw, he looked towards the green liquid that the monster had spat at him. Grinning, he said that this distance would be enough. He used the backstab skill he was behind the monster with. With a grin, holding up his dagger. An hour later, Zolan sits with his feet dangling over the cliff and asks why he still hasn't signaled them after all the time has passed. The anti-mainstream exclaimed that an entire hour had passed, and had he decided to run away? Longface angrily asked what he was doing because he was out of reach of the voice clock. He said he hoped his plan hadn't failed. Drun said that this is unlikely because in the team information his health bar is still complete. He surmised and surprised that he still hadn't started fighting the boss. Otherwise, why didn't his health bar drop in so much time? They heard the main character yell at them to get ready. They saw a cloud of dust approaching. J Run asked if it was the boss. Anti-mainstream exclaimed that he really lured the boss here. Zolan asked what they should do. Frowning, Lingy shouted at them not to act too quickly and wait for him to lure the boss in the middle. As he ran away from the huge monster, he thought that they would take his life in a moment. Someone shouted to take a look at the boss' health. Long face was surprised to see that he had single-handedly lowered his health by 2/3. He asked how he did it. Drun exclaimed enthusiastically that the boss was incredible. The main character shouted to them to get ready. As he ran away from the monster, he pointed a dagger at them and shouted at them to smash their Molotov cocktails as if they were living their last day long face, and Jay run through incense mixtures shouting loudly the anti-mainstream threw Molotov cocktails with a grin. Zolan squeezed her eyes shut and throwing Molotov cocktails without looking shouted that she didn't care anymore and would just throw them all. Molotov cocktails fell on Much Dragon, who was standing on the ground with his mouth wide open and black teeth bottles shattered on its body, and the monster was engulfed in flames. Jay Run shouted for him too. Daizol Land smiled and thought it was nice, as if she was beating this freak to death with money. The anti-mainstream crowd watched in disbelief as she violently threw Molotov cocktails, laughing angrily. Red blood spurted from the burning monster's eyes. The main character shouted to them to be careful because he will soon enter berserk mode. He said that once the boss enters berserk mode, their Molotovs can no longer be applied to him, and this is his special skill in berserk mode. Longface asked what they should do. He waved his dagger, shouted at them to throw Molotov cocktails at him. They asked in surprise if he was crazy, and said that even if they couldn't win, there was no need to kill themselves and that they wouldn't kill their own teammate. They stared in surprise, and Ling Si shouted for them to throw Molotov cocktails at him. Drun shouted that he believed him and threw a Molotov cocktail. The main character praised him for his good work. Several Molotov cocktails fell on top of him as he stood in front of the boss, shrouded in flames. The dialogue box says, "You have activated Starfire Set Special ability. For 30 seconds you will be immune to any fire damage, and your next attack will deal fire damage, dealing 5 times more damage to burning targets." The main character's eyes were burning with flames, and he offered to dance in this violent flame. A crowd of people are standing at the entrance of the dungeon. One person asked about the fact that they still hadn't come out. Another person pointed out that this group of solo players had been in the dungeon for an hour and asked if it was possible that they could actually pass it. Another told him that this couldn't be the case because even Celestial, one of the 5 major guilds, couldn't pass the increased difficulty. Another person suggested starting with a low difficulty rather than watching the commotion. Bai and Tiana are standing near the wall. A guy in the crowd said that they were probably huddled in a corner somewhere in the dungeon, trembling with fear. The other laughed and agreed, saying that they would probably be out soon, and since there were so many people here, he wanted to see them disgrace themselves. Bai frowned and gritted his teeth. As he asked why these solo players were still hiding in the dungeon, he assumed it was because he was afraid to go out. He thought that if Chana hadn't been so interested in them, he would have left by now. Wasabi Khan said that staying inside the insane difficulty for so long wasn't easy, and if they entered it, staying alive for so long on the insane difficulty would be difficult even for them. Bai asked if he thought they would succeed. As he approached Wasabi K, he said that he still hadn't shown him how to use the special item he found in the level 8 dungeon last time in battle. Laughing, he asked if he was talking about the power breakthrough device. BY put his hand on his shoulder and told him not to think that he didn't know. He said that even the deputy head of the guild was interested in his subject. Wasabi Khan replied that it was a one-time item and should only be used during important PvP. Closing his eyes, he said that he planned to use this item to raise his place in the arena. BI exhaled and said it was boring. He said that the arena is a place for PvP where any player can enter, even plebeians, and from this he loses motivation to even participate in it, although the rewards become better the higher the place in the ranking. Opening his eyes, Bai thought that he was most interested in Tiana. Kiana continued to stare through the binoculars. He told her that there was no need for her to be so interested looking through the binoculars. She replied that she was just looking at the dark red portal. She said that her intuition tells her that something is about to happen inside the dungeon. Is a dark forest. Mud Dragon stood in front of the main character, shrouded in fire, waving it. Pause. The dialogue box says that Mud Dragon has entered berserk mode. Drun shouted to the main character that the boss had entered berserk mode, and he needed to be careful. Longface asked if he was sure he could do it. He told him not to let himself be touched, or he would die. Laney thought that after entering berserk mode, the only thing he needed to watch out for was the skill he was going to use. His eyes glowed with fire. He thought it would be over in 30 seconds. The monster swung its hand wrapped in electricity and hit the ground with red energy. Link, he thought that it's coming. Kicking off the ground, he leaped forward, throwing Molotov cocktails. He ran forward, surrounded by Molotov cocktails falling from above. The main character looked sharply to the side. Dodging the monster's blows, he kicked the Molotov cocktail forward. He repeated this action several times. Anti-mainstream exclaimed in surprise that he was dodging a boss skill in berserk mode with so few moves, while at the same time kicking the Molotov cocktails they threw at him. Noticing his skills and techniques, he asked who he was. J-Run asked if he was hallucinating. With his eyes shining with the light, he turned his attention to its micromechanics. The dialogue box said, due to the fact that you haven't taken any damage yet, your current combo accumulation is 3,659. Frowning Lex, he thought now. He quickly ran forward using the Jet Rush skill. The dialogue box says a bolting attack utilizing the user's extreme grasp of body movements and agility with a body like water speed as fast as lighting, thus Jet Rush. Mud Dragon stood shrouded in fire and the main character ran in his direction. Along the cliff, he hit the Molotov cocktail in the air with a dagger and shouted, Jet Rush, Starfire's Inferno. Mud Dragon's body was covered in multiple explosions. The Molotov Cocktail fell on top of the bus. The main character appeared above him, swinging his dagger. He said it was time to end it. He smashed a Molotov cocktail over the boss head with a dagger. The monster's head was blown apart by a huge explosion. The dialogue box says Starfire's Inferno special attack has been activated, dealing 5 times more damage. Zolan stared in surprise at the fire in the monster's empty health bar. The dialogue box reported that their team had defeated the Mud Dragon boss, Lord of the Swamp. She wondered what he had said. Lynx, he asked her if she had studied novice healing. She replied imped that she had studied it. He said that he would give her the novice do disperse skill book and she needed to learn it. Turning around, he said that he would leave the rest to her. The main character called out to Zolan. Long face shouted at her to use disperse. Drun shouted use healing. The anti-mainstream shouted at her to hurry up. Frowning, she obeyed. Dialogue boxes announced the use of the novice D of disperse and novice heal skills. Red energy glowed under the protagonist's feet. His health was close to 0. Fire dealt him 24 damage and healing restored DR health. The dialogue box reported that 30 seconds of fire damage immunity had ended, ridding his teeth. He said that he was lucky that her disperse and treatment were on time. They looked at the fallen monster in surprise, and the main character said that this style of fighting on the verge of life and death is still hard for him. The monster lay in front of them, splashing green liquid on the ground. The people near the dark red portal say that they still haven't come out, and it's already been a long time. The voice asked what they were doing there for so long. Another voice urged us to get out of here because it's a waste of time. The guy smiled and told them to get out of here and said they didn't need any more information because they'd been waiting too long. The other guy thoughtfully said that the group of solo players must have been completely wiped out and they had nothing to figure out. The red-haired girl told the dark fur beastman that this group of solo players was very good at stalling for time. The beastman laughed and told her to be patient and one day they would still come out of there. Opening his eye a crack, he said with a smile that their task was to have them confirm something of insane difficulty. The dialogue box congratulated the group with hidden information on completing the Dark Forest dungeon on insane difficulty. The crowd exclaimed in surprise when they noticed the dialogue box. The guy in green clothes exclaimed in surprise that there was even a notification about the first pass. A girl in a mage's outfit exclaimed in surprise that they had actually passed it. The guy in the helmet asked who they were and if they were from the guild that ranked first. The guy with the animal ears exclaimed in surprise that it was impossible. The dialogue box displayed the record of the first passage of insane difficulty by a team with hidden information. By looking at the dialogue box said that they actually passed it. Surprised, he asked how they did it, and even more surprised, he turned his attention to Tiana. She walked forward with a frown and thought that she should find out who was commanding this group. Frowning, she thought she should meet him. People were shouting to look here because they were out. The main character came out of a dark red portal. They came out of the portal, and the crowd shouted that they were solo players who had passed an insane difficulty. A guy in the crowd, pointing his index finger in surprise, exclaimed that it was them. A voice in the crowd asked which guild they were from, shouting that they were very cool. The guy in the helmet exclaimed that they were incredible because even the people from Celestial couldn't pass the increased difficulty. Another person asked what kind of equipment it was. The other guy said that their information is hidden, and he can't view it. The anti-mainstream asked in surprise if they became famous so easily. Zolan, looking around, said that there were a lot of people here. A guy in the crowd with bright eyes as asked if the people who managed to pass the insane difficulty had any secrets that they could share. Longface smiled awkwardly and said that was why they surrounded them. Someone in the crowd said that this girl was also good. Zolan chuckled and said that she was just a simple healer. She thought that she couldn't have imagined that this would happen to her, and she likes that everyone is paying attention to her. Responding to the crowd, Drawn said that he was just following the boss commands and there's nothing to admire here. Lingyi, calmly closing his eyes, thought that as expected they were immediately surrounded, and he did the right thing by asking them to hide their information. He called them to go, saying that it was inconvenient to talk here. He said that he still needed to explain how they would split the rewards for the first dungeon pass and what they would do next. Jay Run obeyed with a smile. Zoland said, displeased that she wanted to show off a little more. The voice asked them if they had joined the guild. People in the crowd noticed that they were members of the Wolf's Fang Guild. The guild guy said that apart from the equipment set, there's nothing special about them. He said that they must have third of the Wolf's Fang Guild, ranked third among the top 5 guilds. He said that he is a vice captain of the 3rd division. The main character thought that they still had the same presumptuous attitude. He thought that in his previous life their guild was also in 3rd place, but their arrogance was even worse than the guild in 1st place, and they used their guild's name to take over the monster spawn sites everywhere. Frowning, he thought that solo players who didn't obey them became their target in PvP, and all they could do with suffer in silence. He thought that he had suffered a lot at their hands in his past life. Anti-mainstream, noting that it was one of the top 5 guilds, asked if they were going to recruit them. Longface replied that they didn't have the skills to join any of the 5 major guilds. Vice captains said that they are most likely not members of any of the 5 major guilds because they hid their information. He said they had good skills and asked who their captain was. They said that their captain was Lingxi, pointing their finger at him, approaching him The guy said that he could not have imagined that the thief would be the leader of the team he asked if he had joined the guild. The main character calmly told his group that the server would close in 2 hours and they had to go. The guild guy frowned in annoyance and said that he was talking to him. Anti-mainstream awkwardly poked him on the shoulder, pointing his finger forward, and said that the vice captain of the Wolf's Fang guild was talking to him. The red-haired girl irritably shouted that even if he was a guild member in the first place, he shouldn't be so presumptuous because they were still a guild in the third place, and he should at least answer them whether he was a guild member or not. The boy gritted his teeth. The anti-mainstream said fearfully that they were angry. The girl said that if they haven't joined the guild yet, they should consider it an honor to be invited to join. Frowning, the guild guy smirked and said that if they hadn't joined the guild yet, then he, as the 3rd Division's vice captain, would provide them with special treatment, and maybe they could join their sub-gold first. He passed by asking who they were and said he wasn't interested. The guild boy and girl opened their mouths in surprise. The main character's team exclaimed in surprise that he declined the offer, shaking with anger and cursing. The guild guy said that he was tired of him. A weapon started to appear in his hand and he offered him a duel if thought he was that good. He shouted for him to accept the challenge. A guy in the crowd shouted that they needed to get away from them. Another guy said that Wolf's Fang's vice captain was completely out of control. The girl next to him said that they would watch from a distance because they didn't want to be dragged into it. The anti-mainstream startled man shouted that this was bad because his opponent was a member of Wolf's Fang. The guy from their guild, pointing at the main character with his weapon, shouted for him to accept the challenge. The dialogue box said if he wanted to accept a request for an immediate duel from a stranger. Long-Face told the others to be careful and that they would step back a bit. Anti-mainstream asked if the main character had any grudge against the Wolf's Fang guild. He closed his eyes and said that he didn't have time for this. Frowning, the guild guy said that if he didn't accept, it wasn't a problem. He said with a grim face that even if he got a red name here, no one would do anything to him. With his hand outstretched, he used the exploding fireball skill. The dialogue box says you were attacked by a player, you can protect yourself. Killing an attacker and self-defense won't get you a red name. The main character dodged the fireball by standing to the side. He glanced at it. Frowning, links, he jumped forward with a swing of his dagger, and the guild guy jumped back in surprise. He asked if he wanted to die. Jumping back, he wondered what kind of reaction speed it was. Frowning, he thought that he had dodged his exploding fireball by moving so little. Tiana shouted, intercepting thorny vines. Plant roots appeared between the main character and the guy from the guild. Lingy looked away in surprise. Tiana was standing next to him, holding a pen and a piece of paper in her hand. The red-haired girl gritted her teeth in annoyance and said that she was from the Nebulous Guild. Tiana glanced at Lingy and thought that her instincts told her that he was the person Dae was talking about. The red-haired girl shouted furiously, asking why she was interfering. Stepping forward, Tiana called out that he was a friend of the Nebulous Guild. She asked if they were going to create a conflict between the guilds by introducing the Wolf's Fang guild. The guild guy gritted his teeth and said that they were their sworn enemies. A vein in the red-haired girl's face swelled with anger. A blade appeared in her hand, and she said that it was time for her to stop meddling in their affairs, otherwise they would get rid of her too. The guy shouted at her to put the gun away. Surprised, the girl obeyed. He shouted that it meant that she was going to protect this guy on behalf of the Nebulous Guild. He said with a vicious expression that they would fight to their last breath in monthly guild war next week. Tiana frowned and said that they would meet again in the guild. Or the guild guy turned around and told the red-haired girl to leave. She asked if they were really going to leave, just like that. She asked why, because they could have just gotten rid of them. The guy replied that it wouldn't be a problem if this thief didn't belong to any of the other 4 major guilds, but now that Nebulous was protecting him, would she be able to take responsibility for starting a war between the guilds? He said that if the higher-ups heard about it, even he wouldn't be able to get away with it. Grinning madly, he told Tona to wait until they met at the guild war. He laughed angrily and said he would have a good time with her. LC thanked Tiana. J-Run asked if he was okay. The main character replied that he was fine. J-Run that it was good. Longface said in surprise that they almost started fighting. Zolan said it was scary. Tiana turned to the main character and asked if they were members of a guild. She said that being the first to pass the insane difficulty, there was no way they wouldn't show everyone their guild, because it was one of the many ways to achieve glory. For the guild, she approached him and added that any normal guild wouldn't provoke the people from Wolf's Fang, and they have the guts. Tiana said that even as a professional, nothing good would happen to a solo player if they became an enemy of the 5 major guilds. She said with a smile that if she didn't help them, it would be difficult for him to resolve this situation, thus he owed her a debt. The protagonist thought that she was right, and no matter how strong a person might be, it was nothing compared to a guilt. Zolan exclaimed with burning eyes that she had a rival. She exclaimed, how dare she come and try to steal her strong guys. The main character asked what her intentions were. Tiana chuckled, pointing her index finger at the main character. She said that she needed his help. The square was full of people and yellow portals. Tiana told LC that if he joined in their guild Nebulous for a short period of time and participated in the next monthly guild wars, she would either repay him with generous rewards or give him whatever equipment or materials she could get her hands on. She asked what she thought. Frowning, she thought that his skills were something to pay attention to, and she could use him in the future. She thought that the first thing she should do was get him to join the Nebulous Guild, and then try to get him to stay in it. Lynx, he folded his arms and refused. Tiana said in surprise that there was no need to refuse her so bluntly. The main character said that he doesn't plan to join the guild anytime soon, even for a while, and the restrictions from joining the guild will take away a lot of freedom from him. Tiana reached out her hand worriedly and said that if he was worried about restrictions, then as the division's vice captain, she would try to give him as few restrictions as she could. She said that she only needed his help to some extent in the monthly guild war. She asked him if he was happy with it. The main character looked at her and said that he didn't think her guild needed help. He added that he was just a level 5 thief. Tiana looked at him in surprise. She said they needed his skills, and Neb and Wolf's Fang were always enemies due to conflicts between them in the early game for the advantage. She said that at first everything was normal, and any guild in the development stage would come into at least some conflicts with others. Frowning, she said that up until now the conflicts were getting bigger, along with the guild's growth. She said that as he had seen just now, she had met some of the most problematic members of the Wolf's Fan Guild. Tiana added that because she had just come to his defense, they would most likely target her in the next monthly guild war. Giving him a pitiful look, she begged him if he could protect her from being killed and forced to lose levels in the next monthly guild war. She thought she should make him stay. Langy calmly told her to just not participate. She said she couldn't and thought it was a very cold answer. She wondered if he hadn't been moved at all. Tiana said that participating in the monthly guild wars is a way to get a large amount of guild honor points, and it has its own challenges. She opened her eyes in surprise, and a dialogue box appeared in front of her saying that a stranger had sent her a friend request. Turning away, the main character said that from the beginning he would add her as a friend, and think about it, he thought that she most likely helped him because she wanted to get some benefits from him, but only caused herself more trouble in the process. After glancing at her, he said that he would give his answer before the guild war. Tiana happily agreed and thought it was a success. Waving after him, she asked him to give her answer as soon as possible because even though she would recommend him, he would still need to go through the normal entry process. The main character frowned and said that it was a chore and they would talk about it when the time came. She shouted that he would definitely be able to easily complete the entrance task. She said with a smile that she would wait for his answer. The dialogue box next to it says that the friend request was accepted. The dialogue box says player's character information, player link C-class thief level 5. Equipment Starfire set players' personal information age 17. When she noticed his age, she thought he was 6 years younger than her. The information disappeared behind the message that the information was hidden, and Tiana exclaimed that he was fast. With a smile, she raised an eyebrow and thought how unkind he was to hide information even from his friends. B was looking at her from around the corner, frowning furiously. He cursed. The dialogue box reported that information has been set to private. Lemji thought it best not to disclose any information. Drun said with a smile that he was back. Long face with a smirk asked what he was talking about with the nebulous beauty, and if it was something he couldn't tell them. Anti-mainstream asked with a smirk if she really liked their cold boyfriend. Zolan clenched her teeth angrily. The main character frowned and told them to stop talking nonsense, otherwise he wouldn't give them any equipment. Long face and anti-mainstream laughing awkwardly said they were just joking. Ling Si said that the equipment he needs only drops from the insane difficulty of the dark forest, and the chance of dropping items in dungeons is high at the moment. They are opened, and this time they were lucky. He said that he will keep the cheap assassin's equipment set Armguard, and they can divide the remaining items and coins among themselves equally. He thought that this set of equipment would provide the greatest agility bonus that a thief player below level 10 could get, and it would make life easier for him for a while. Anti-mainstream with a flash of his eyes exclaimed that this is a lot of material. Zolan laughing shouted that she was rich. The main character thought that he could only wear it after the 6th level, and he needed to hurry up and get the rest of the items from the set as soon as possible. J-Run asked in surprised that he was giving away the rest of the name, and even without considering the coins, the items are quite valuable. He offered to divide them equally. The anti-mainstream exclaimed in surprise. Length, he said that he didn't need everything else. He added that he made changes to the experience distribution, lowering their proportion to stay at level 5, and they most likely raised their level. Zolan exclaimed that she had reached the 2nd level. Long face and anti-mainstream said they had reached the 4th level. J-Run exclaimed that he had reached the 3rd level. The main character said that before he reaches the 6th level, they need to go through the dungeon several times so that he gets all the equipment from the signee. They exclaimed in surprise, and the main character said that he was quitting the game first, and they would meet here tomorrow. He got up from the bed, removing the game helmet from his head. He thought that his current life was going smoothly. Heavenland's scientific helmet can allow players to have a good time playing the game without affecting real life or game progress. The main character greeted the Old man and offered to help him clean up. The old man replied that he was up early. Over the next 3 days they continuously challenged the insane complexity of the dark forest, and finally on the third day before quitting the game the main character collected the rest of the items from the cheap assassin's equipment set, greaves, boots, and a headdress. The main character said goodbye to the noisy group. Run said goodbye to him. Zol land her hand outstretched with tears in her eyes, and on her knees asked how he could leave them like this. The main character saying goodbye to them smiled and said that they would meet again. Frowning, the protagonist decided to move on to his next goal. 10th level location, castle of the singing moon. Behind the castle, surrounded by roses, was a large waterfall. He said that this thing should still be here. He dropped down from the cliff in a few leaps. The 6th level is visible above his head, and he thought he should be more careful. In front of him was a level 10 corpse seeking evil spirit looking at him. The protagonist thought that they had a difference of 4 levels. Watching it from the bushes, he thought he could handle one, but he might attract a whole horde. Frowning, he thought that with the extra agility and perception from the equipment set he should be able to avoid them using the terrain. He thought that his goal wasn't to challenge the level 10 singing moon castle boss. Many monsters walk on the ground. The main character thought that for this he still does not have enough strength. He jumped down with a few jumps on the rocks and thought that he needed a skill book in waterfall invisibility of the evil spirit. When he landed, he exclaimed in surprise. There were 2 fallen monsters on the ground in front of him. He wondered why the remains of evil spirits were lying here. Frowning, he wondered if there was already a level 10 player here. Lang Si thought that in this game it's worth a little distraction, and countless people start to catch up. The water in the waterfall falls down. The main character jumped forward from the cliff. When he landed in front of the chest with 2 blue lights, he thought that he had arrived at the place. The main character said that as expected he was still here. A cursed chest without a lock is lying on the rock. Standing in front of it, Lingy thought that after opening it he would put a DU on it. The dialogue box says, "You have discovered a cursed chest without a lock. It looks like this chest isn't locked, but the person who opens it will be punished with a curse. Do you want to open it?" Touching the cloth on the chest, he thought that compared to the skill he could get it was definitely worth it, and he should get it. The dialogue box says, "The chest is open. You have received a minus 60% DU that will be applied to all your stats. The curse will last for 6 hours. The effect will be activated immediately." A black AA poured out from the opening of the chest. The dialogue box says, "Because of the cursed chest without a lock, all your stats have been lowered by 60% time until the end of the curse, 5 hours 59 minutes." A black aura enveloped the protagonist, who frowned as he picked up a book that glowed purple and said that he had received it. Grinning nervously with black eyes, he thought that the skill books took time to learn, so he needed to find a safe place. The voice shouted that he had said that there would be a fool who would open the chest. The main character opened his mouth in surprise and turned around. In front of him were 3 people of the 10th and 11th levels. The guy in the hat told the captain that he was a genius, thinking of waiting for some fool to open a chest and get a curse to steal the skill book from him. Frowningly gritted his teeth. The water in the waterfall fell noisily down. The guy laughed and shouted that they had been waiting for a fool like him for days. The guy with the elf ears said to let him see what's inside the chest, since it's worth such a strong. Main character thought that he was careless and didn't think about the fact that someone could ambush on such a map, and now he has the invisibility of an evil spirit crowning. He thought that if it hadn't been for the curse, he was sure he could have stood up to them. The main character thought that now his stats are lowered by 60%, and this will be problematic given that the opponents have 2 10th levels and 1 11th. The captain told him that he had to be skilled enough to come to this location at the 6th level. Lang Se wondered if he should give them the book to ensure his survival under the captain's health bar. It was written that he was from the Wolf's Fang Guild. Arting, he said that he was originally prepared for a team fight, but he didn't expect a single person to be up against him. He told him to be obedient and hand over the item. The main character thought it was the people from Wolf's Fang again. He thought that given the characters of the members of this guild that he had seen, even if he gave them the book they would still kill him. Frowning, he said, who would have thought that the mighty Wolf's Fang Guild would steal things from solo players? He asked what if he didn't want to give it up. A dagger appeared in his hand. The dialogue box reported that the item was stowed away in the backpack. The beast-eared guy grinned and said that he didn't think he would be so stubborn even after finding out that they were members of the Wolf's Fang Guild. Drawing an arrow in his bow, he told him to die. Frowning Lings, he used a backstab. The dialogue box reported that he had attacked the player, and now he can defend himself justifiably. When he was behind the beast-eared guy, he thought that whoever attacked first would gain an advantage. He swung the dagger. The captain, with a huge sword with a grin, blocked his strike with a dauntless block. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist thought that his stats were too low, and even the speed of his skill slowed down noticeably. The sharp-eared guy laughed viciously at how dare he decided to attack them first. He left it. He swung his sword and knocked the main character back, dealing 30 damage. They used a locked-on shot and a yellow arrow shot towards Ling Si. Thi thought they were cornering him and told himself to calm down, and I think he wondered if there were any items that could help him in this situation. Hearing that someone used a backstab, the main character opened his eyes and surprised. The guy in the hat swung the blade behind him, dealing 120 damage. The captain ran to meet him and shouted that they would die faster if they gave the item to them. Swinging his sword using greatsword's punishment, he shouted for him to die and hand over the item. Blood gushed out of the protagonist's chest. The elf-eyed guy grinned darkly and said that he would silence him with the vein cutter, and then he wouldn't be able to fight. Gritting his teeth, Lingy thought that he couldn't afford to be hit by the silence casting skill. The guy behind him was standing with his bowstring drawn. The main character used jet rush. The guy with the bow exclaimed that he was coming to him to make himself a simple target. He shouted that he was calling death himself. The guy fired a bow. The main character used a backstab. Before the arrow hit him in the torso, it hit the archer in the back, dealing him 50 damage. He was surprised to think that he could fight like this even after his stats were lowered by 60%. He wondered how strong he would be without the curse. The guy in the hat, frowning and gritting his teeth, said that he used his skill activation spells to dodge their skills and attacks. He said they were very precise micro movements, and he wouldn't have been able to do it if he'd been even a millisecond late. The guy said that even he couldn't do it and asked who he was. The captain asked why they were standing and shouted at them to attack. The man in the hat obeyed, and the archer cursed as he clutched his back. He gave the command to surround him and not let him leave. The main character was standing in a scattering cloud of dust. A basic war smoke bomb appeared in his hand, and he thought it was the only thing he could do right now. The dialogue box says that basic war smoke has been activated, and all players within its range will temporarily lose their sight and cannot be targeted. Duration 3 seconds. The boys shielded themselves from the smoke. He shouted that it was a small trick. Swinging his energy sword, he used AoE disperse. The main character used a one-time grappling hook, and grabbing it flew out of a cloud of smoke. The captain shouted that he was using grappling hook to escape. He ordered them to shoot him. The archer fired a bow, using locked-on shot. A yellow arrow shot towards the main character's back. The arrow pierced his chest, and gritting his teeth, he thought that he would remember Wolf's Fang. His hand loosened, and he let go of the rope. The main character fell into a waterfall. The guy in the hat shouted that he had fallen into a waterfall. The captain swore and said they didn't get the item. The archer said that if he fell from such a height, he would surely die with his remaining health. The captain, looking at the splashing water, said that they would meet again, and then he would be out of luck. Waves of water hit the stone shore. The main character's hand appeared out of the water. He climbed out onto the stone bank, frowning. He thought that it was lucky that he had spent a lot of money on instant recovery potion before coming. He was surrounded by trees. A man in the crowd asked if the entrance test hadn't ended recently. Another person said that he heard that Vice Captain Tana especially arranged it for one person, and he came here after seeing a message in the guild channel. The guy laughed and asked if it was some strong rich kid. The other guy said he wasn't sure, but Tana wasn't the kind of person who would treat rich people differently. Tiana said they had arrived. The main character asked why there were so many people here. Tiana replied that they were very curious about him because he was the first person to pass the entrance test alone. The guys in the crowd looked at him and said that he looked ordinary. Frowning Lynx, he thought, why are there so many people here, and they'd better go level up. Exhaling, he said that he was surrounded by an annoying crowd again. Tiana said that compared to the crowd that had gathered after he had passed the insane difficulty, this crowd was small, and he should still try to get used to it. She thought that she was right, and it really was him. Looking at the main character, DE exclaimed that it was him, and she couldn't have thought that he would be the first to pass the insane difficulty of the Dark Force. She asked how she was able to convince him to join after all. She had already offered him, but he refused. She said that he was special, and since he decided to take part in the challenge, she should definitely make him stay. Tiana thought with a frown that she was right, and having such a talent around would definitely help her achieve her ultimate goal. Wasabi said they were here. Tana told the protagonist that he could easily pass this test. B said with a smirk that he was the thief that T was talking about non-stop, and he passed the insane challenge. He said it was interesting. Tiana said it was the captain of their 3rd division. By lie, she said that the members of the 3rd division behind him are in charge of the Nebulous Guild's entrance test. She said that he needed to hold out for 10 minutes against the guild member in charge of the challenge to pass. A guy in green clothes waved his hand asking to choose it. Tiana told the main character to choose his opponent. Grinning, B asked her to wait. He suggested that the main character let him be his opponent on the trial. Tiana said in surprise that there was no need for him to fight since this was just a normal test. BY said that since Tiana had recommended him convincingly and even arranged the entrance test specifically for him, then he, as the division captain, should also take responsibility. He thought that if he had the courage to accept the challenge, he would humiliate him. He thought resentfully how much he was laughing at making Tana talk about herself non-stop. She said they were 3 levels apart, and that was a bad idea. Langi said he was fine with that. Tiana turned to look at him in surprise, frowning. The protagonist said that he didn't care if it was him or someone else. He said, hurry up and get started. Tiana whispered worriedly to him that he was a division captain and 3 levels above him. She asked him why he had accepted his offer. The main character replied that this is not a problem. He thought that he wanted this boring ordeal to be over as soon as possible. B, trembling with anger, asked why they were whispering and standing so close to each other, he said if he wanted to start follow him, he thought that he would definitely humiliate him in front of Tiana Bai, said that the test field is located in the forest area. Shauna called out to Ling Si. She put a bracelet on his arm and told him to wear it. He asked me what it was. Shauna replied that it was an evaluation device that every guild has. She explained that evaluation device will issue a primary score based on the player's current level, stats, equipment, and how they played in the past. She said that it also constantly updates the score during the test, making it easier to determine a person's skills, and by wearing it they will be able to see their score. Tiana said that according to the rules of the Nebulous Guild, a person who scored less than 100 points would become a member of the 3rd division. A person with a score between 100 and 150 would enter the 2nd division, and a person who received more than 150 points would become a member of the 1st division. The main character interrupted her and said that all his stats were lowered by 60% due to the curse. He suggested that this should affect the assessment. She asked in surprise what he said and how he was going to fight. She asked how long it would last. The main character pointed to the curse icon and said that it would last about 10 minutes. He said that everything was fine, and since this was a normal test, there shouldn't be any problems. The main character went ahead and said that he wanted to finish the challenge as soon as possible in order to continue raising his level. Covering her face with her hand, Tana said that B's score was 92 points. Looking at the arena, a man in the crowd shouted that the test was starting. A girl in the crowd exclaimed that B himself was going to fight. A guy in the crowd exclaimed that it would be interesting. Tiana and Wasabi K watched with a serious face. Bai said that the time limit is 10 minutes, and to be honest with everyone, he won't feel sorry for it. He told him to accept the challenge. The main character agreed and said that it would be better if he used his full strength because he is a thief and Bai is an archer and his class is counter. As the dialogue box reported that he had accepted the invitation to the guild entry test. Bai smirked and asked if he thought he was an ordinary archer. A bow appeared in his hand and he said that he would pay for such jokes. An ice bow appeared in his hand. Lynx, he thought that it looked like he was an agility type archer with an ice slowing bow. Frowning, he thought that for a player close to his level, he would be quite a difficult opponent. Bui used rapid fire, moving quickly and shooting ice arrows at him. The main character, while dodging the attacks, thought that he immediately started using strong attacks. He blocked 2 ice arrows with his dagger. Bai smirked and said that if all he could do was